Chapter 61, Chapter 60. It was the evening of my second week in Liss. Before leaving I had to set and put everything ready for Daenerys so she wouldn't have to move a finger, so with that in mind, I stayed setting up the city for her, a little paradise just for her. So after 2 weeks, I was finally due to leave, but as if the gods wanted me to stay the winds started to howl outside shaking the sea violently. Apparently, a storm was coming our way, a really big one. Which meant I would have to delay my plans for a couple of days or so, at least for the moment being. Not that I really cared. Daenerys was probably in her last month of pregnancy at this point. And while I wanted to start waging my war to the other cities so as to keep her out of the enemy's sight, a bigger part of me wanted to see my children. I wanted to hold them. It seems you are staying, Daenerys smiled. Maybe our little chimeras will decide to come out during this time. Maybe they want to say hi to daddy. Heh, that would be lovely, I chuckled, touching her belly with the utmost care wondering if my little warriors would come out and say hi soon. Our motherly instincts feel they are about to hatch. Any time this week, the ravens that usually protected her, or brooded her pregnant stated, and while I knew what they meant by that she was about to hatch, the image they put on my head was disturbing, to say the least. What do they say? Daenerys giggled. That our little chimeras are about coming any day now, I answered with a smile of my own. As we continued to talk about how the kids would look, and names for them, my mind started to ponder on what was my family on Bear Island doing right now. I knew they were safe, and out of the political mess that was moving inside the Seven Kingdoms that was the main reason I had left them there, to avoid any of them getting hurt, a safe haven for them, like the one I'm giving Daenerys right now. But even though I knew they were safe, I didn't really know how was my little cousin, Lyanna, or my Aunt Madge. Were they happy? Sad? Something in between? Madge Mormont POV. Today, like every afternoon, I was alone walking in the forest with one of the many of armored bears Ronard left behind, with my mind on the idea that it had been quite a while since my great-nephew left to Essos. Originally it was intended to be a simple and uncomplicated business trip, and yet, somehow he ended up marrying Daenerys Targaryen, also declaring his intentions to conquer the known world, becoming one of the most prominent players on this war game. Did I approve what he was doing? No, it a million years, but he was family, and we bears stand together, against anything and anyone, because we don't a reason to stand for our family. We don't need to be logical. But I can't say I fault my little nephew. Everything started when they broke his betrothal, and he probably made his second one with rage and thirst for retribution. Mom, when is cousin Ronard coming back? Lyanna inquired, running towards me, smiling at the bear. Like always she was wearing her custom-made battle armor. Since Ronard left she had been practicing non-stop to be a warrior on pair with him, wanting to be of use to us, to his cousin. Maybe he needs a bodyguard. I smiled. No matter how impulsive Ronard's decisions were, he had made such a good impression on everyone that served under him or with him, that we would follow him to hell. He will be back soon. He is one of us, and we bears don't die so easily. We bears stand together. Lyanna smiled, satisfied with the answer as she left fading deep into the woods to practice. Stupid boy, I growled with a smile on my face. If you wanted help taking over Essos, why didn't you call us? We bears must stick together. DC Mormont POV. Ronard had left and had started a war without us, his family, and that was something I planned to fix. I wasn't going to let my cousin go into battle without us, not any longer, not without his armored bears, and his armored ladies, as he used to call us. You were right, mother has no idea when he is coming back. Lyanna sighed with a pout, that turned to smile really fast. When are we leaving? Lyanna had discovered my plan to go and help Ronard, and the only way I managed to buy her silence was to offer her to come with me, and it wasn't like she was going to charge into battle. Ronard would probably have her with his new wife. As for me, I wanted to go into this war with him. I wanted to ensure he would come back to us, his family. He was beyond reckless, always acting like he was invincible, unstoppable, unkillable, but no one really is, so he needed us, by his side, to help him. We have to leave tonight. I have gathered half of the bear squadron, and some of our men. I smirked at her. Very well, Lyanna smiled excitedly. Finally, we will be able to serve the vodka bringer. One of the many armored bears coming with us growled, as soon the other growled in approval. Sometimes I feel they can understand me, Lyanna added with a puzzled look on her face. Later that night, Lyanna and I left the house, being careful as to not be seen or hear. The men I had gathered were loyal to Ronard like everyone on the island, but unlike others, these would keep quiet, so that mother wouldn't stop us. So you finally decide to leave. The voice of my mother stopped me cold on my tracks as I was running through the forest. She was standing against the tree with a mug of vodka on her left hand, and her weapon on her right, looking at us, with cold-blooded eyes for a brief yet long moment that seemed to last an eternity before she suddenly smiled. Be sure to slap the brat for me. He would dodge it. I laughed as if the palpable tension that was a few minutes ago had never existed. Is the thought what counts? Mother laughed, turning her gaze to Lyanna. I will go. You can't stop me. Lyanna said, standing her ground, as if ready to fight her way out of this, knowing full well mother would give her the spanking of her life. I won. Mother laughed, so loud and fluidly that her mug was spilling vodka around as if leaking. I killed my first man when I was your age. I learned how to fight before I even learned how to read. That is our way. Ronard made our island safer, but it wasn't always like that. We the women's of Bear Island don't stand by as the men fight. We fight with them and we fight better. So go out there and come back, or I will bring you back to life and kill you again for disobeying me. Lioness smiled, nodding. I will make sure she comes back, I smiled. You better make sure we have the same amount of bears or more when you come back, Mother laughed, as she moved out of the way. I believe your crew is waiting. Renly Baratheon POV. I had the Tyrells with me, and an army of 100,000 men, loyal to me, and yet, I was losing. My brother and the North refused to bend the knee for me. All I had was Loras, who firmly believed I was going to win. I had to unite the 7 kingdoms so that I could focus on getting rid of the menace that the Lord of the Bear Islands had become. Why so tense? Loras smirked, kissing me. Do you have some tensions to release my king? I do, but only their heads rolling would fix that. I smirked at him, kissing him back, though, your body does wonders. I know, and it's all for you, Loras said, and after that, I was engulfed in the fiery pit of pleasure. Chapter 62, Chapter 61. Daenerys POV. It has been a couple of weeks since Ronard decided to stay after an awful storm, and I was full of hope he would see our children's first breath of air, and it seemed that time was coming near. I could feel it. This morning was very cold and for some reason my back ached a lot. Ronard wasn't on the bed, probably working on the office, so I staggered as I walked to find him. Thirst filling my body with an unfathomable strength, drying my very core. Deciding it was best to satiate this basic need first, I went to my night table and drank the cup of water that was placed there, as I stared at the cup feeling as if I was drinking air, not really satiating the feeling I had. After finishing that unsatisfying cup of water, that did close to absolutely nothing, I decided to continue my quest to find Ronard. My mind and body needed him. As I walked through the long castle halls that seemed to have become plains on their own right, I asked everyone if they had seen Ronard. Nobody knew where he was, and by the looks of the ravens following me with worriedly looks through, neither did they. After a few hours looking, with noon coming close, the backache increased, sending chills down my spine, working itself into a slow rhythm. And with this it dawned on me very clear that my little chimeras were not waiting any longer. Where in the 7 is that man? I growled, desperate. He had to be here. This pain was as much his as it was mine. My search for Ronard elongated until the afternoon. My backache had evolved and was encircling my entire being. By this point I could do nothing but pant and whimper in pain, the steady rattle of rain dampening her moaning call for succor. The pain that started as nothing but a soft back pain had increased to waves of cramping agony that left me gasping for breath, and on and on. The ravens at this point were panicking. Some even flew away to find Ronard, with the pain abstracting my feeling of time that became night in the blink of an eye. I could hear the doctors Ronard had hired murmuring to each other. I could see the tops of their stupid heads. I could feel their concerns. And suddenly, like a dam breaking without notice, with a pain that struck fast like a lightning, my water broke. With more surprise than concern I looked down the floor that was drenched with whatever came out of me. All but one thought occurred to me once again, where in the 7 was my husband, Ronard Mormont POV. Today was a great day to go out for a hunt with Neltharion. He wanted to eat, and enjoyed hunting his meals with me. So as to make it more interesting I sneaked with my dragon son out of the castle, making sure to avoid everyone, including my ravens. Today it was all about me and Neltharion. And what a great day it was. Neltharion had eaten 10 times his weight. I could feel it on my shoulder, and while he wanted to keep hunting, the night was already about us and everyone could be worried about us. *Keuvu? That sound was indistinguishable. One of my raven had found me. With a smile I turned around, to see around 20 ravens flying at me. Getting closer and closer, too close. Keuvu, all the ravens cawed in one voice, not slowing down, not even a bit. Why weren't they slowing down? At this point they would crash with me. They must know that, right? Right? Keuvu, like a thunder all the 20 ravens collided with me, peaks first making me flinch in a mild amount of pain. It didn't hurt much. It was the equivalent of stepping on a Lego with a normal human body. But still, ouch. Why the heck are you guys doing that? I asked them, partly angry, but a bigger part of me was confused as to why they would try to kamikaze themselves against me. That stun had done more damage to them than me. Lady Corntaker and her eggs are hatching, all the ravens said in one voice. Hatching. Fuck. It took my brain a full second before I could process and react to this news, and before I knew it I was running through the forest, leaving the Flash in shame. Hiss, Neltharion hissed, digging his tiny claws on my shoulder to not fall like a meteor on the ground. I grabbed the little dragon and kept him on a tight grip while I ran through the forest, with the city looming nearer and nearer, as if I was zooming into a pic. It took me a couple seconds to reach the city, but I didn't stop nor slowed down. I continued to run, with my ravens flying behind me, dashing through the city as if it was in flames. It only took me a couple more minutes to reach the castle that I just parkoured to the top, with my fingertips bleeding lightly for the harsh treatment. Following my ravens, until I eventually heard Daenerys, her voice cracking and asking for me, in pain. That alone pushed me into overdrive, giving me a nitro push that increased my already high speed even more. Eventually I reached the room where she was at, and with a kick strong enough to bust the door down, I ran towards my wife, who just glared at me. Sorry, I was hunting, I said, holding her hand. Traditions say. The doctor was about to tell me how I shouldn't be here, but the piercing and deadly gaze of my wife in pain was enough to shut him up. Where the fuck were you? Daenerys asked, panting with pain. I was hunting with Neltharion, I said, explaining myself once again, while pointing to the scared dragon that was clutching with all his might to my chest with his tiny claws, still processing what happened. I hate you, Daenerys growled, gripping my hand with enough strength to bring a normal man down. You don't, I whispered to her ear, letting her trash my poor hand all she wanted. I do right now, Daenerys shouted, pushing once more, her face being red for this immense effort she was putting. This continued for a couple of hours, and before we realized it we heard the sharp, angry, and surprisingly loud cry that thundered inside the room. Before we could even process what we heard, the doctor smiled as he said it was a boy. The doctor handed the baby to me, so small, as if he knew I was his papa. The baby stopped crying, tiny fingers curling around my pinky. I never felt so powerless, so out of control. I watched my son peer through brand new eyes at what must be such a strange world, with no fear, only wonder. I tried to form a coherent sentence, but my mind was drunk with emotions, tears flowing like a fucking river through my eyes. A few moments after, a similar but equally sharp cry echoed, the last one startling me a bit, thundering with equal strength inside the room. It's a girl, the doctor said, handing the baby girl to Daenerys. With something reminiscent of a smile, the little baby looks at us as with eyes filled with nothing but innocence. I smiled with a cracked chuckle as I see her tiny legs kick in a tiny jagged motion, looking for that resistance they are used to inside the womb, I guess. They are so beautiful, Daenerys said weakly, with a smile that could overthrow the sun. By this point, my mind was partially back together. They are, and nothing will ever harm them. Cave. I am not crying, you are asterisk. I need a tissue. I need one cave, asterisk. Cave so, ka beautiful? We won't let anyone hurt them, ka? Chapter 63, Chapter 62. After the birth of the twins, I stayed a couple of weeks on the island with Daenerys and them. They were so beautiful, my little Gerald and Alyssa Mormont, but everything must come to an end, and for me it was unfortunately, it was time to go. I had enemies and rivals that I had to eliminate, to ensure the safety of my family. So today, it would be my parting day. I was sad to leave, but I had the memory of that fateful day. I'll never forget the moment I held my son and daughter for the first time. I was mentally exhausted and terrified and mostly overwhelmed with everything, but then moment I laid my eyes on them I was also so very much in love. Love at first sight. It was as if my life was theirs now, and it probably was. A part of me still couldn't believe this was actually happening, while another part of me felt overwhelmed with all the happiness, and I can only imagine what Daenerys feels when she looks at them. My ravens were very much in love with my kids. Rhoda personally had requested to be there for them to defend them should anything come their way. How could I reject such offer? Promise to come back, Daenerys smiled, holding the twins with a soft smile. If not for me, for them, I will. I smiled, kissing her and the babies in the forehead. My son was probably a baby copy of me. He had her mother's eyes though, but with my complexion, dark hair, and same skin tone. As for my daughter, she took so much from Daenerys. I could faintly see she would have white golden hair like her mother. One thing I knew is that I would spoil the ever-living shit of them. As I continued to talk with Daenerys, I heard one of my men shout that a ship was coming. A ship. It couldn't be any enemies. I had half of my Krakens protecting the island, and they would never leave their posts, so whoever was coming was friendly, or at the very least using friendly colors, which would prove my defenses needed some improvement. With a look, Daenerys understood that it was best if she and the twins waited inside the castle, while I sorted this unexpected incident. Gathering a few of my men, I ran to the bay ready for anything. Should they be enemies, they had committed the most stupid and sad attempt of an infiltration ever. If they were allies, well, I suppose the term allies is a vague one. I only trust Daenerys and my animals, and I suppose my family. It didn't take us long to arrive at the coast. After all, we were very close, mostly because I was supposed to leave today. The ship that had arrived had my house colors and banner, so it either meant that some of my men had decided to go over my orders and come, or someone had stolen one of our ships and was trying to Trojan horse my ass. With an eyebrow raised, and mild curiosity taking over, I approached the ship, even more from a new perspective, and now I could clearly see from this new angle that the men running the ship were my men. Hello, my lord, or should I call you my king now? That voice was easy to recognize. Daisy Mormont was here. With a sigh I turned around, seeing her sitting on a pile of rocks and weapons, with a stern but playful look. Behind her was Lyanna, with a shy expression on her face but also with a strong resolve to be here, standing with her custom-made armor to fit her young body. Hi, my lord? I mean, my king. Maybe she was nervous. They had disobeyed my rules, after all. I'm going to ask this once, and only once. I smiled coldly, narrowing my eyes. Why are you two here? Daisy took a step forward without skipping a beat and answered without fear or hesitation. To help you. We are family, and we bears stand together, so here we stand. There she goes quoting our family motto. I sighed, turning my gaze to Lyanna. And why is she here? You must know she is too young for war. Mormont women don't shy off from war or a fight. Lyanna said with determination, shaking her apparent shyness away like it never existed. Tell that to a man piercing your throat. I spat. She could be killed or raped, or worse. I want to be of help. I have been training. I can do it, Lyanna said with resolve. You two have disobeyed direct orders from your lord and now king, I stated with an emotionless tone, but I'm a kind man, so your punishment will be light. Daisy, you will help me on the fight, but seeing you can't follow simple commands, you will be under me, as one of my guards, losing control of the men you brought and anything. It will be my honor. Daisy kneeled, her blade shining with the daylight. This was supposed to be a light punishment, demoting her from commander to a simple guard, and it aligned with my original plan, for I would keep her out of trouble. As for you, Lyanna, I had to think of another job that sounded like a punishment but was actually not my baby's bingo. You will guard and protect my kids with your life, is that clear? Both Lyanna and Daisy froze for a moment, smiles forcibly forming in their faces. It would be a great honor, my king. Lyanna practically threw herself into a kneeling position. Once again, my pseudo-punishments weren't taken that way, but I suppose only our family would take something like this. They had lost for the moment being their power to command others as a punishment, and yet they were happy to serve me, in ways most lords that had a taste for power would find demeaning and a waste of their so-called superior qualities. After a long minute of nothing but dead silence, I laughed as I hugged the living shit out of them. Now that I did my kingly duty, are you two ready to meet your niece and nephew? Niece and nephew? Lyanna inquired with excitement but was confused by the terminology. After all, they weren't my biological sisters, and my kids weren't their niece and nephew, but I was raised with them. They were my family and the closest thing I had to siblings. Yes, now we can leave them waiting. They are eager to meet their aunts. I smiled, practically dragging them over to the castle. I had to flex my adorable bundles of joy, like a good father I had to. Euron Greyjoy POV. Soon, the Sea Stone Throne would be mine, with my ship the Silence, adorably named for the fact that I cut out the tongues of all who serve it in, just because a mute man can't spill secrets, my secrets, or annoy me by talking. Ronard might have a big army, overwhelming mine, but he made a grave and terrible mistake, for his greatest weapon would turn to be his greatest weakness. His dragons would turn on him because I will be able to control them with the dragon horn I found in Valyria. A little blow on this bad guy and his dragons will obey me, and his head will be toasted. I smiled, for this war was won the moment I entered it. After admiring my trump card for a bit, I decided to go to the war council. I had been invited to see what were the plans the old lion had. I have heard of you, Tywin, the old lion said with a scrutinizing look as if measuring me up, and his expression said he was not impressed, but oh, he should. Cruel and fearless, but also, unstable. You might be already playing us, you only play for your own gain, and that is something I can respect, but unlike you, we Lannisters keep our word and pay our debts. We shouldn't trust him. He is a man that insults the gods and stabs everyone he serves, one of Tywin's generals said, looking at me with disdain. Godless? Me? Tywin, it seems your generals are going senile. I am the godliest man ever to raise sail? You serve merely 7 gods, but I have served 10,000. From Ib to Asai, and for that I was made the drowned god, and now when men see my sails, they pray. But I don't listen. I smiled at the everyone table. Don't worry, we share a common enemy, one that we both want death. That we do, for now. Tywin nodded. The old was catching on. He knew or expected my betrayal once we eliminated our common enemy. No wonder he has such a fame. Chapter 64, Chapter 63. After presenting my wife and kids to my cousins and letting them get to know each other a bit with small talk and stuff, I left for Myr and Tyrosh, the next targets of my list, leaving both Lyanna and Daisy on the island, with the mission to protect my most precious things. I knew that my son, Gerald Mormont, and my sweet little princess, Alyssa Mormont, my 2 greatest treasures, would be safe. I still remember when Daenerys asked why I had named our son Gerald. Sadly, it's a reference she will never understand. While I originally wanted to bring Daisy with me, I eventually caved into the new voice in my head saying she would do better than any other soldier in my army protecting the babies. She was a woman that could give Brienne a run for her money in battle, and would die for me, my kids, or my wife. She was initially surprised that I had changed my mind, but still happily obliged to her new task at hand. And finally, after almost 2 months of doing nothing but chilling for the most part, and taking in the fact I was a parent, I was back on my conquest plans. Myr and Tyrosh. Myr was a city close to the shore and Tyrosh was an island, so I would have to be careful while pushing them. Unlike during Lys siege, I didn't have many Krakens to take their navy down. After all, I had left the majority of them in Lys to ensure invaders found the place a tad difficult to invade. But even one Kraken can do a lot of damage, so I decided to kill 2 cities with 1 stone, with a simple, yet effective plan. First, I would send 2 out of the 3 Krakens I had with me right now to Tyrosh, their mission the same they had in Lys, to destroy their navy and cage them in with no escape. The last Kraken to attack Myr's navy, slowly decimating them. While I would be leading the charge to Myr with my cavalry on the land. With this triple assault, I would cut the amount of time it would take me to subdue both cities, ensuring maximum efficiency. In a military point of view, all I knew about Myr was that they, like Dorne, fought traps and misdirection, by using poisons and other stuff to kill their enemies. Everything in Myr was coated in poison from the daggers to the arrows, which was incredibly effective against my basically naked Dothraki. But even with their Dorne-like tactics, we would win. Myr didn't have a big army, being among the weakest cities in Essos, but the reason it was one of the best cities available was because they were the most technologically advanced city in Essos and probably the known way world. I have to destroy these cities fast. The last thing I want is my kids forgetting my face. I chuckled as I sulked in sadness, imagining that. They won't forget your smell. I know I wouldn't, Neltharion added, approaching me from behind, trying to calm me down, but ended scaring the crap out of me. Since when can you talk? I wasn't scared, but from only hissing to this, it was a big jump. A month or so. One day I didn't know, and the next one, Neltharion shrugged. And you just now decided to talk? I inquired, wondering why it took him a month to do so. Never had anything good to say before, and you never asked. Besides, you understand me without talking, Neltharion answered. From now on, tell me when you learn something new. Do your brothers talk like you? I inquired. Did they evolve like him, or would it take them more time? Sure and no, my brothers can't talk yet. Rhoda says it's because I'm the one that spends more time with you, so they will need more time. Don't really know what that has to do with it, but that's what he said. Neltharion shrugged. Rhoda was probably onto something with that. Usually animals, the closer they get to me, the weirder they get. It all started with him, who eventually changed to Rhoda, which would explain why Neltharion was the first of his brothers to talk. So Rhoda's theory had some merit. I was basically a radioactive man that gave animals personalities and a voice. Huh, well, take that evolution, shove it. I chuckled. Anyway, don't sulk, my new brother and sister won't forget you, Neltharion added, trying to finalize my concerns. I looked at the dragon, whose size was roughly above a big dog now, and smiled. Well, and even if they do, I'll work it out. That's the spirit, Dad, Neltharion hissed happily. So how long before I can burn people? If this was a human kid, that question would probably be considered a red flag. A week or so, but the word normal left the building I like to call my brain a long time ago, with all the shit going on in my world. Great, I will show them what happens when they mess with Neltharion Mormont, Neltharion hissed, breathing out some fire. Neltharion Mormont. Well, that was unexpected, Neltharion Mormont. I chuckled. Yes, you are my father, and fathers give their last name right. Neltharion tilted his head in confusion. Oh, you mean I forgot my other last name? Sorry, Neltharion Mormont Ravnicuse. Yeah, that wasn't what I meant, my cute and now talking dragon. Ravnicuse? Well, they did brood you a lot. Neltharion nodded as he muttered, I know, but sometimes I don't like them. They are always trying to feed me corn, but I don't like it. Caw? How? You have any idea how hard we work for that corn, ungrateful chick? A raven appeared out of nowhere. As I watched the raven and Neltharion discuss, one thought that made me smile crossed my mind. My little babies would have a life full of random shit, but it would be a wholesome one. Raven's uncles, dragon's brothers, horse cousins, things will surely never go dull with this family around. I can burn you? I dare you? Caw? Just try. Caw. Nick Fury Ravnicuse POV. I was like always doing my job, that was spying these unstable motherfuckers to ensure they didn't do anything to hurt the Cornbringer. I was, after all, part of the Council of Ravens and the director of the spy network in West Arrows, so I had to aim for perfection. Today in my normal routine, I had found an interesting item, a horn that apparently could control dragons. That was a big motherfucking no. Euron Greyjoy was the current owner, keyword being current, because I was about to steal that shit or destroy it. I was not going to take risks. If that horn worked, it could be a nuclear deterrent, one that wasn't allowed to exist outside Ronard hands. And I have to thank Euron for letting me know about its existence, because if it wasn't for this crazy ass motherfucker that for some weird ass reason talked to himself for 2 hours about how the horn was awesome and how the horn would ensure his victory, I would have guessed the horn was simply bad indoor decoration item, or a really bad souvenir. For one part, the horn might just be a stupid horn, with no use that is being glorified by delirious thoughts of a madman. But I rather be safe than sorry. You can't never be too careful. I can't let such thing to be even be a possibility. We have a mission. That mission is simple. We must retrieve that horn the crazy ass pirate has. Any questions? I asked my raven squad. What do we do if retrieval is impossible? One raven asked, raising his wing. We destroy it. Our priority is ensuring that our Cornbringer has no threat for when he comes back. Is that clear? I said as I opened my wings, to make an emphasis and close the point. My squad caught in one voice. Then let's roll, I shouted, as me and my 40 Raven squad took off. Our destiny, the room of madman. Chapter 65, Chapter 64. A man entered my room without knocking, staring at me for a second with a dagger on his hand that was knocked down by one of my ravens, and unfortunately for him, I'm a soft sleeper, so as soon the dagger was on the floor I dashed at him with a swift motion, barely moving, managing to seize the attacker to a wall with a knife to his throat without waking Neltharion. I proceeded to order my ravens to check the perimeter, as I interrogated the man. Yawning, I whispered to his ear without missing a beat, I was having a good dream, and you fuck it, so who the fuck are you? The man gulped, shaking dumb with fear. Magister poorly sent me, from Mir. I was supposed to kill you before you arrived. I hummed at that. How did someone manage to get within my crew and do such a thing? My ravens would have noticed it. Then again, I don't have as many ravens to spy Essos as I would like, so things are bound to slip by. Since when are you here? I sized the man up. He wasn't an assassin, no by a long shot, but was sneaky enough to be a thief. Since Pentos, the man stammered, the plan was one would kill you, while another caused a diversion. Some of my crew members had been personally picked by Illyrio, like the chefs and other non-combatant members of my personnel, and being honest with myself, I don't keep an eye on him as much as I would like. My ravens have become limited with the range they have now to cover. Did Illyrio knew about this? Yes. He and Magister poorly talked about it in the tombs of Pentos. The man nodded with fear. Oh, fat man, you have sealed your fate. Not that it wasn't sealed already. I see. Is there anybody else on this ship? A few that I know of, but I don't know their names or identities. If a pair fails the other will try later, the man answered, tears rolling down his cheeks. We are a few because he knows you would not kill all of your crew just to purge us out. Not necessarily all the crew, just the people from Pentos, but nah, I will find you guys one by one, I smiled, cutting his throat, and in the process waking up Neltharion. Who was that? Neltharion inquired yawning while stretching his legs. Nobody, I yawned back, deciding I would deal with this sad attempt to kill me later, after my morning tea. Okay, Neltharion said going back to sleep. Michael, we captured an assassin. One of my blood riders shouted. I frown. It seems they have captured the diversion. Just how low they think of me, sending commoners to kill me. I must at the very least the hardest men to kill. With a sigh and forgetting about my morning tea, I walk out of the room. Your false king is dead. The diversion shouted. Wow, don't count the chicks before the eggs hatch, I chuckled as I walked to the man, that by this point was extremely surprised. So how much were you guys paid? I mean, it must be a lot, considering. Well, none of you would make it out of here alive, I smiled, taking a seat. We do it for the greatness of the Magisters. The man spat, making my blood riders to react by breaking his arms. The only great one is Arkell, and those who oppose his herd will die, my blood rider said with a dark smile. Pray to your god, see if he saves you, or maybe your Magister. PFF, very well, kill him. I yawned. This guy, unlike the last one I killed, was a fanatic, and that type rarely shares information. What do we do? My blood rider inquired as he cut the assassin's head with his curved blade, probably wondering if there were more of them hiding. Listen up everybody, don't trust anyone that is not a Dothraki, or an Ironborn. If you see anyone cough in a suspicious way let me know, I shouted for everyone to hear. Some of the Pentos crew was nervous, others were downright scared, and they should. We are to arrive at Mir in a couple of hours. I would recommend killing all the Pentosi men and women, my blood rider said, flashing a bright, happy smile at them. That would ensure we kill them all, but I like the challenge, or we can do this. I smiled taking a step forward. Those who come out now will be forgiven. Those who don't will be tortured once I find out. I will make sure those who don't suffer for months before dying. A dead silence followed after that, but I waited. Seconds turned into minutes, but eventually, 3 men walked forward, kneeling. Magister Poorly has our families, please. Some of us didn't have a choice, one of them begged. The other 2 had similar reasons, and because I was a dad now, let's say I had a soft spot for those willing to kill themselves for their families. Very well, you 3 are forgiven, but for the moment being you will stay on the cells, just to avoid accidents. With that done, I walked to my room, but a concerning thought blasted my mind. I left Pentosi personal in Liss, my wife, my kids. Almost snapping my neck I turned to one of my ravens, go and make sure Daenerys and my kids are safe and sound. Daenerys POV. A few days after Ronard left, assassins tried to take my life, and not only that, but they also tried to kill my babies. Moments like this I'm glad Ronard is and will be overprotective of us. His animals jumped out from unseen corners to attack the assassins, from bears and horses to snakes and ravens. They all fought, helping Daisy fend them off alongside Lyanna and Jorah. Lyanna got stabbed in the process while pushing an assassin out of the room, by tackling him, and if it wasn't for Jorah, it would have been too late to notice their intents. He overheard their plan and rushed to my room waking me up and alerting Daisy just in time for her and Lyanna to fight the 16 men off. The snakes, ravens and our new battle bears fought the men off with ease, destroying the attempt to our lives. In the end, I was completely unharmed, and so were my babies. The only one that got hurt was poor Lyanna, who got stabbed on the arm, but the doctors said she would be fine and would make a full recovery. Are you all right, my queen? Jorah asked. I am, thanks. I nodded, my mind still racing at the thought of my babies getting hurt. But now that the storm had calmed down, all I could think of was if my Ronard was okay. He had to, so we could burn Illyrio for this. He had to have a hand in this, and he would pay with fire and blood what he tried to do. Ronard will go crazy when he hears of this, Daisy sighed. Who is next bitches? A bear growled. Unfortunately, nobody could understand him. This is how we do it in the motherland, another bear added. Asterisk that was excellent. A snake hissed. Ravens for the win, a raven added. These animals aren't normal, Jorah muttered, seeing as if the animals were having a civilized conversation. Nick Fury Raveniku's POV 2 days earlier during the mission horn retrieval. Entering the room of the craziest motherfucker was easy, and everything was going according to the plan. That was until the unstable bastard entered the room, staring at my squad, carefully lifting the horn. He took a second to process what was happening before he rushed to stop us. Oh no you don't motherfucker, I dived him in, trying to gouge his one good eye. I'ma scratch the heck out of you bitch. What is wrong with these birds? Euron growled, slapping me away, but by the moment he managed to do so, the horn was flying out of the window. Bye bitch, I cawed, flying out, giving him the bird. Chapter 66. Chapter 65. The next day early morning after we settled our camp close to the coast of Mir, I rode with 5,000 men to Mir, to leave a message, surrender and die fast, or surrender and die slow. Our camp was set fairly close to the city, 2 hours on ours, to optimize my troops' movements. I knew Daenerys and my kids were safe, a raven had informed me of it. I could feel it too deep within my heart, but still. Just knowing they had attempted to take them away from me, forever, It fired up an unyielding monster of rage that was running wild deep within me. I wanted more than ever to kill those who had hands in this suicidal arrangement. I wanted to see their lives slip through their eyes. Michael, one of my blood riders said, bringing me back to reality, and it seems Mir was waiting for me. The city was closed, and there were people on the walls, the Magister, and some other nobles. By the looks of it, they wanted to end this with a duel, the audience of highborns, and how they weren't trying to shoot me down with arrow shouted it was that way. They would send their champion, and he would fight for Mir, and he would die for Mir too. A boy riding with savages, you are no true king, you are nothing, and today we will show you that. I could hear the Magister cackle in amusement. He was like every Magister, totally despicable, disgusting, repulsive, and right now, there wasn't anything I wanted more than to cut his head off. Our champion will show you that. Let me, Michael, it would be my honor. My blood rider said, practically begging to be my champion, but I silenced him with a plain glare. If someone was going to fuck their morale was me. Seconds after the doors of Mir opened, and a man with a horse galloped out of the city, their champion, confirming my suspicions. They wanted to make an example of my forces, by defeating my champion with theirs. That way if they won, which they would not, it would boost the morale of everyone serving them. Too bad I was about to drop that morale so low they would need therapists. I started walking towards the champion. From afar I could clearly see he was 3 feet or more above my height, a giant on his own right. With a smile, the giant stops around 50 meters from me and turns to his people shaking his massive two-handed axe over his head while shouting how he would kill me and my army would follow. Everyone in Mir cheered for him, including their army, that is supporting the giant by slamming their spears against their shields. Being supremely bored with this sad facade, I started to sprint towards him, initiating the fucking duel once and for one, with shield and sword in hands. The giant turned around at this with a flashing smile throwing a spear at me. Without breaking my stride, I raise my shield, blocking the attack. I don't stop, nor slow down, I just keep going towards him, smiling. The giant in reaction to this snarls at me and hoists a second spear and hurls it at me with even greater strength. But once again I simply raise my shield, blocking the attack and breaking the spear in two. With a smile, I stop for a second as I cast aside my sword, immediately speeding up towards him. By this point, the big man knows even with his limited brain power that spears won't kill me, so with a growl, he unsheathed a massive two-handed sword to wield on his left hand while he used the two-handed axe on his right. With a beastly growl, the giant lets loose a battle cry, and charges at me. It took me a few seconds to be in front of the soon-to-be-dead man, who in reaction to my speed tried to raise his weapons trying to crush me with a double strike, but I lunged forward with terrifying speed closing the gap to his personal space, and before he even had the chance to use his weapons and bring them down on me, I proceeded to thrust and bash my shield straight through his skull repeatedly, over and over and over again, until there wasn't anything but a puddle of blood where his head used to be. There will be no mercy, there will be no peace, those who oppose me today will suffer. I shouted for everyone to hear, as I spat on the former champion. After killing the champion, I left the borders of Mir, going back to my camp to coordinate with my army. I still had to plan how we would approach the siege. For one part my Kraken was already laying waste to their navy, and in a matter of hours, all their ships would be down the sea. Unfortunately for me, the siege would take more than that. I had many options, between them was, burning the city, poisoning the water supply, and more. But I wanted to have something to rule after the dust settled, and I would. So after a few hours discussing and planning with my generals, I decided to infiltrate and open the gates myself, breaking their defense from the inside out. If that did work out, all my generals had to do was have the army in the gates of Mir by tomorrow morning. With the plan at hand, I left my generals in charge, while I rode with a horse to the castle, with nothing but 2 ravens and my blade on my side. Once inside I would have to find someone stupid enough to betray their people just enough for me to get in with my army, and then kill them. It was dark, very dark, the moonlight barely shining tonight, and thanks to that, nothing could be seen unless you were a nocturnal animal, the perfect time to sneak inside the castle. With patience and focus, I climbed the castle walls, barehanded making sure not to make any sound whatsoever, step by step taking my time. I knew once I was on the wall, I would find archers waiting for me, so I had to be careful. If I could avoid killing anyone during this infiltration it would be most beneficial because I would avoid people going after me, but that's just wishful thinking, and that didn't exist on war. After roughly 15 minutes of climbing, I was nearly at the top. 3 archers were patrolling the area. Sadly for them, they would have to die. Pushing my entire body up above the wall with my hands, I dived the archers, killing them so fast that they didn't even have time to process what was going on. They just fell like lifeless dolls to the ground. That was mercy, not that they deserve it, but killing them with a single swing of my blade was as merciful as I could be, and I didn't want to be merciful. Moving through the shadows, while using my ravens to locate every enemy within the area, I avoided every single soldier. If I had to take a guess, I would say the Magister would know someone infiltrated by morning because the new archers from the morning shift would find the ones I killed there, but by that moment, it would be already too late. Magister poorly, the army is moving towards us, but considering their speed, they don't intend to attack. A voice caught my attention, no that I recognized, but the information was of importance to me. The young Westerosi must be planning to scare us with his massive numbers. The Magister laughed. Too bad our attempt to kill him and his family failed. It would have made our life easier. Now all I have to do is wait for Illyrio and together we will crush this thorn in our sides. What a lucky surprise. I found the idiot who rules this city, and he admitted trying to kill me and my family. And while right now there wasn't anything I wanted more than to torture him to the point where his sanity was forever lost, I had a mission that in the long run would ensure my victory. If I killed him, his men would eventually overwhelm me, and I would die, and I am not ready to try and see if the god of light will Edo Tensei my ass back to the living. I had enough of the gods for an entire lifetime, so I rather avoid situations where I would need him or them. So taking a deep breath, I moved forward with my plan, leaving the Magister behind. For now, just for now, he would live. After hours exploring and sneaking the city at night, I found the gates I was looking for, but the system used to open them proved to be complicated for myself. It was one of those gates you needed Tumen to open them, one in each corner to pull the levers, which was humanly impossible for me, I guess. So with this in mind, I modified my plan a bit. Knowing I would need help to open the gates, I set my sights to the only source of willing men inside this place that would even consider helping me, Mir's prison. But I wasn't going to jailbreak any criminal. I had to say their charges. Fortunately for me, the prison I infiltrated was mostly inhabited by petty criminals, so I took the first man I saw, and freed him for this shithole. His crime? Stealing food for his family. His sentence? Dying on the plaza for everyone to see. What did I offer him? A job with a good and stable income, and his freedom, if he helped me. It wasn't surprising when he cried while accepting my offer, but things went downhill from there. See, I would have stopped my prison break with him, but I can't turn away so many willing men that are absolutely not deserving of death and that also happen to be begging to help me take the Magister down, some just for a piece of bread, others for their freedom, some for a job. So, considering my long-term plans, I accepted. Besides, it's not like I was freeing rapers, killers, or something worse. No. For some reason, this prison had hundreds of so-called criminals that had only committed petty crimes, and even though their crimes were at much deserving of a few months or years of jail, they were still sentenced to death. A tad harsh and sad for them, but just what I needed, people hating the current system and willing to support anyone for a chance of retribution. So by the end of the night, I had freed around 200 men while killing along the way around 50 guards. But a bunch of men without weapons were nothing but sacks of flesh begging to be cut, so we raided the prison, killing every guard, and stealing every weapon. In the end, I had 200 men, poorly equipped, but ready to die for a new era. The first thing I did once I was outside the prison was to order the men I had just liberated to move in groups around the city while hiding their presence the best they could. Their mission was simple. They would wait for me to rush at the gates to come out and cause a diversion, buying me as much time as possible. With that done, I sneaked back to the gates with 4 men following me through the shadows. Thank God the gates were conveniently somewhat close to the prison. Once we were there, all we could do was wait. My ravens would tell me when it was time to open the doors. Minutes turned into hours, but our time lurking in the shadows was coming to an end, for a raven was flying close by shouting, "Open the gates!" My raven cawed loudly, flying above the gate. Giving the signal, I jumped out of the shadows, killing 2 of the guards nearby the gate with a single swing as I rushed to the gate with my current helpers. As we approached the gate, more and more men started to pour into us, pushing us back, or at least they tried to. I kept swinging my blade, leaving a trail of bodies behind me. Soon enough, it was diversion time. The men I had freed from their prisons charged into battle, reclaiming their freedom, and buying me more than enough time to open the gates. My army was outside charging at full speed towards the open gates, a few minutes away of us. All I had to do was hold my ground for a minute, and I would win this. Come on, fuckers. I shouted as I started to slaughter any men getting close to the doors. My newly acquired friends were falling one by one, but they had completed their mission superbly, and I would honor their deaths with my blade. Chapter 67, Chapter 66. I smiled, pointing my sword towards Mir's army. Let's go, fuckers. I could hear my Kalasar galloping towards the gates, raising their swords while crying out with one voice. Hundreds of arrows whistle through the air. As I cut each and every single one of them, my hand lighted for a second, showing the runes of the left hand of God. I was pushing my body to react to hundreds of attacks. I could hear the cries of pain of my men as arrows hit them. I could also hear them tumble into the ground dead, one by one, but they needed more than that to stop my army, so I continued holding my ground. By this moment all the men I had freed had either died or were down on the floor bleeding out. As for me, I was slashing at the men that approached the gates, the limited space of the gates helping me to fend them off. I wasn't unscathed. I had cuts all over my body, nothing serious. The 9% of them could be considered paper cuts at much. My mind and body were moving and acting in total sync, but I was fighting more than even I could chew, and little by little I was being pushed back. But unfortunately for Mir, it was already too late, as my Kalasar was already riding past me, slaughtering the men at the gates like dogs. Kill all those who oppose you, don't show mercy, I shouted. For the Great Kull. My blood rider chanted, jumping off his horse near me. Michael, allow us to take this city in your name. You had done enough. I looked at him for a moment considering his offer but decided to wave it off. I wanted to kill the Magister myself, and that I would do. No, not until the Magister is dead. I practically growled. Then I'll fight by your side. My blood rider smiled, rushing into battle. With a smile, I rush into the castle, cutting everyone that got in my way down with ruthless precision. Every time I swung my into the air, another mere soldier would fall. By this point, my face was covered in their blood. My Dothraki besides me now, thoroughly crushing the army inside the castle walls, with no sign of slowing down at all. Magister poorly POV. Someone had infiltrated and opened the gates. We were doomed. We would die. All of us. We didn't have enough men to fend off 80,000 men. That man would kill me. He knew about my attempt to kill his family. He was sure to make my last moments as painful as possible. I wasn't going to give him that chance. Not in a lifetime. If I were to die, it would be on my own terms. I would go under my own rules. Poison. I would kill myself and steal him the pleasure of torturing me. In the end, I would leave this world with one last victory. With that in mind, I rushed to my cabinet trying to get on my poisons to kill myself, the one that doesn't hurt and takes your life away silently. But as soon as I got the cabinet, a bunch of ravens started to attack me. Asterisk caw? No you don't bitch. Asterisk. Asterisk KOV? You won't kill yourself. Asterisk. Back to Ronard POV. I continued to rush through the enemy lines, slaughtering everyone in my way. My ravens were steadily guiding me to my target. It seemed he was trying to kill himself. And they were stalling him. If the coward thought he was going to escape and go out on his own terms, he was sorely mistaken. Because the moment he attacked my family, the gods had forsaken him, and I was his new god now, and I wasn't a kind god. Suffering, long and lasting suffering awaited him, and his cries of pain will bring me an immense amount of satisfaction. HRMMM anger controlling you is, Rhoda said, flying beside me. And what am I supposed to do? Be happy. I growled as I continued to cut heads off. No, but let go you must. Or anger the captain will be. YRSSSS Rhoda was right. If I started to allow my inner demons to control me, I would end up becoming a monster. But how could I? I knew he was right, yet all I could feel was rage when I thought of that man. I hated the desire of hearing him scream in suffering, yet it was all I could think of. How could I just forget what he tried to do? How could I just let go? Let others kill him you must, for your anger to quench. YRSSS. I stopped for a second to think about it. Perhaps this way I would stop this feeling I had, and the end result was the same thing, the guy being dead. No, I wanted him dead, and I would do it myself. He who puts the sentence must swing the blade down, but as Rhoda said, I would control my inner demons. I would not let rage guide me. He would die, but I would not dirty my hands as I did with the Magister of Lys. I would have justice without becoming a monster. I will kill him, I finally answered, in front of the door where the Magister was hiding. With one kick, I busted the door open. Behind the door was the pitiful man that tried to take away everything from me. My ravens were attacking him non-stop. He was bleeding and crying on the floor, utterly pathetic. Please. I don't want to die, he begged, crawling to me with tears and snot. Hate, anger, disgust, were just a few of the feelings I had for him right now. I wanted to kill him, I wanted to make him suffer, but Rhoda was right. Once you go down that path there is no turning back. He had to die, but I didn't have to become a monster. I wasn't like him. Disgusting, I breathed out, cutting his head with a single swift. A part of me was crying this was not enough, but I knew it had to be done. I can't crave into every emotion I feel, or I'll end up becoming a tyrant. No matter how much he deserved to scream and suffer, I had unfortunately to be the better man. Was I satisfied? No I wasn't. This was but a moment, a fleeting moment that lasted too little to satiate my thirst for blood, but I was happy somehow. I had avoided going deeper into the void. Keeping my sanity is getting harder and harder, I chuckled, as I cleaned my blade from his disgusting blood. And just like that, Mir was mine. While there was still some opposition, by the end of the night, it would be completely under my control. Taking a deep breath, I decided to let my men take the rest of the city. They would do without me for some hours. I needed some time to gather my thoughts and rest before going to Tyrosh. Michael, my blood rider, approached me. Take the city, and kill those who oppose you. I need a break, I ordered him. As you wish, blood of my blood. My blood rider said eagerly, probably happy I had trusted him to take the rest of the city. This was like saying I trust you more than I trust my horse kind of thing for them. HRMM meditate we must, YRRSS Rhoda offered. You know what, sure, let's. I nodded with a smile as I walked out of the castle. Melisandre POV. The fire was showing me things, showing me that I was blind, but the Lord of Light is kind and caring, and he had illuminated my blinded mind to his glory. He had shown me I was wrong, that Stannis wasn't the prince that was promised. No, the real prince that was promised was on the other side of the sea. I didn't know who he was, or how he looked, but he wasn't on Esteros. The fire had shown me he was having a hard time, fighting the shadows deep within him. He needed my guidance. And I would give it to him, my guidance, my mind, my body. But first I had to weaken his enemies. I had made his mission harder when I wrongfully thought Stannis was the chosen one. I had to mend that mistake, or I wouldn't be able to serve under his gracefully light. I had to fix my wrongdoings. I shall be yours soon, my prince, I promised to the fire, as I started to plan Stannis' downfall. Chapter 68, Chapter 67. I woke up early the next morning just to confirm what I knew. My army had taken over Mir, another victory I had lost during this siege, around 1,000 men. Not really a great loss, but still affected me in the long run. Mir took apparently quite a while to subdue, for some of its people, like the nobles, didn't want to bend their knee or surrender, resulting on the street of Mir being fully covered with lifeless bodies that were starting to rot out. As for me, I did feel a bit better after delegating some of my weight to others, even if it was just for a short amount of time. It took a great deal of stress off my shoulders. Maybe it was time to stop thinking I had to do everything myself because I didn't have to. I was a king and kings delegate tasks, reason why they have a fucking small council. Taking a deep breath, I went out of the castle I had picked to sleep in, trying hard not to breathe the air of the city. Thousands died, and the streets smelled like shit. Literal shit. Michael, this city is yours to Tuli, part of your herd, my blood rider said with a smile. No one will oppose you here, blood of my blood. I smiled at him, not really sure how to react. Thanks, and then it occurred to me, it was time to delegate, have the streets clean, and the bodies burn outside the city, no slaves. As you wish, blood of my blood, the man nodded, taking his mission and his men to complete it. One thing off my things to do, now to see how things were going on Tyrosh. I did send 2 Krakens to stir the soup there a few days ago. I also had figure how to deal with Illyrio. He deliberately tried to kill me, which by itself I couldn't care less, but the fact he had aimed for my wife and kids was unforgivable, and while I wanted to boil him alive, I would be the better and bigger man and will not let my anger control me. He would still die, but in a less horrific manner, hanged perhaps, or decapitated. Maybe Kraken food, he seems like a good snack for some massive water creatures. All of those are fast ways to die, and can't be considered torture. Purse. Rhoda. I shouted, a few seconds after the raven landed on my shoulder. Rhoda tilted his head in confusion, wondering what I wanted. Go to Tyrosh and get me an update in their situation, I ordered my feathery friend, who took off to Tyrosh as soon as he was told. All right, 2 things out of my Toto list, I'm crushing it this morning. Daenerys POV. Since that dark day, where the assassins tried to take everything from us, and Jorah helped us just in time, I started to think and wonder that perhaps Jorah was worthy of a second chance, if a man like him, the scum of the world like Ronard described him, was willing to throw his life away for us, and perhaps, just perhaps my brother was worthy of redemption as well. Maybe the incarceration changed him. We were the last of the Targaryen line. If he was willing, he could be the Lord of House Targaryen. Taking a deep breath, I walked towards the prison cell my brother was being held at. I haven't seen him since he tried to plot against Ronard. That time was the last time I last saw him, but time changes people. Time changed me. I was hopeful that he was a different person, that he was willing to let go of his past and be free. Where are you going, my queen? If I might. Daisy inquired. I am going to see my brother, I informed her. She was supposed to be part of the royal guard, so where I was or when was part of her job. Then allow me to come with you, Daisy requested, but I could see on her face she would come either way. Just like Ronard, these bears are stubborn. I don't see why not, I smiled. Then let me come too, Jorah said, kneeling. I offer once again my blade to serve my family till the end of my days. I will discuss this with Ronard, but for now, you will serve with Daisy. I smiled. While I understood why Ronard hated him, I couldn't bring myself to truly hate him after he risked his life to save my most precious treasures. The dungeon was quite the depressing place, nothing but darkness and decay were seen in it. Ronard himself had said our enemies deserve our worst as our allies deserve our best. This was a place worthy of our enemies, a place worthy of those that try to stand in our way. My brother's cell was in the deepest corner of this dark hole, where the rats and other vermins roamed free. As I walked, I remembered how everything was when I met Ronard. I was a scared little girl, with nothing but the hope of going home. Viserys was cruel and demeaning, treating me like a tool for his game, and like a dream, Ronard saved me from my nightmare. Here we are, my queen, Daisy said, pointing to my brother. Viserys, I breathed out, looking at him. He was skinnier than I remembered, wearing common rags that were full of dirt. His once silvered colored hair was brown from all the dirt and other substances in his cell. Daenerys, Viserys breathed out, looking at me, straight in the eyes with anger. You finally come to free your king, sister. The only king I know of is Ronard, and I'm his queen. I practically hissed at him. It seems you have forgotten about the dragon, Viserys chuckled. So what are you doing here? I wanted to offer you a chance. Forget the crown, step aside, and join us, I offered. Why would I step aside from what's rightfully mine, especially when I have you right where I want you? Viserys smiled, looking at Jorah with a triumphant expression. Has imprisonment destroyed your mind, brother? I inquired, raising an eyebrow with doubt. He was in a dungeon, what game was he playing? You'll see soon. Viserys smiled like he always did when he was about to hit me, and punish me for talking back to him. You really prefer to rot in here, instead of being free and getting to know your niece and nephew. I knew Viserys was prideful, but this was just stupid. He even brought the dragons back to the world. I have 2 with me right now, don't you see? He makes the impossible, possible. You mean the dragons that belong to me? Viserys laughed like a madman, and those things you birthed are no dragons. They don't deserve to have my blood running through their veins. Rest assured I will kill them once I get out of here. How foolish I was, to think I thought there was something I could save from Viserys. Not all people are worthy of redemption. Some are deserving of the worst this world can give. You dare to threaten my babies? I stared at him with cold, emotionless eyes. You have grown stupid in this place. Have I? Viserys laughed. Dear sister, once again, you woke up the dragon. With a sadistic smile, he turned his gaze to Jorah and said, Jorah, kill them. I turned to Jorah to see he wasn't moving at all. He looked at me as if waiting for my command. Daisy, on the other hand, had unsheathed her blade, and was ready to kill her uncle if he tried anything out of line. Jorah? Kill them. Viserys started to panic, sheer terror washing down on him. He was your plan, I sighed, pathetic. Now you said many times you are a dragon, now how about we rest that? Sister, please remember who kept you safe, who gave you everything, Viserys begged, tears rolling down his face. I do, I married that man. I glared at him, but don't worry brother, fire cannot kill a dragon, you should be fine unless you are no true dragon. With that, I walked out of the dungeon feeling fire burning deep within me. After all, I had an execution to plan after I interrogated Jorah about what just happened. Chapter 69, Chapter 68. Delegating things would and was making my life considerably easier, that way I could focus on 1 or 2 tasks at hand, by expanding my goals and optimizing my conquest. With this mindset, I had ordered the general of my navy to attack Tyrosh and claim the city on my name, while I went with a chunk of my Khalasar to Astapor. Why did I want to go to Astapor? Well, Astapor or the Slaver City, also known as the Red City, was renowned for their harsh slavery methods and their incredibly lucrative unsullied trading business, aka eunuch slave soldiers. Soldiers that I wanted to buy, their price was high, very high, but what I had gained from Myr and Lys, and what I had from Westeros, I just should have more than enough to buy all the unsullied available. Besides it wasn't like I would lose that money at all, after all, I would recover all my investment and more when I raided the masters of Astapor, and claimed their city for my empire. In the books and TV show, Daenerys got around 14,000 unsullied warriors. My mission was to do the same. They would prove to be quite useful, and unlike the Dothraki they were quite good at fighting armored warriors. Astapor was unfortunately really, and I mean really far away from Myr. It would take me roughly more than a month of travel to get there, if I didn't find any problems on my path. Not that I would find any problems, after all, I had 15,000 Dothraki men riding with me, a big Khalasar of loyal Dothraki riders, and to be honest, I didn't think anyone would stupid enough to attack me. Perhaps another Khalasar, but considering the remaining Dothraki tribes are small, they would most likely avoid me. The question was, would the masters of Astapor be stupid enough to sell me the unsullied? By now people must know I'm conquering, and that's like selling weapons to your enemies, unless they think themselves to be above my reach, just like they thought with Daenerys on the show. I suppose I'll find out there, I sighed. One of the main reasons I had brought with me such a big army was just in case the masters tried anything funny, though I was crossing my fingers they didn't. It would be a shame to kill the unsullied because their current masters were stupid. Daenerys POV. I was a fool to think my brother had any redeemable qualities, an utter fool. But I could see now, I was blinded by the beautiful truth. Viserys was nothing but a nuisance, a threat to my husband, my babies, and myself, and threats must be purged. And he will be purged, in a poetic way. His entire life he had called himself the dragon. Well, I was about to see how much of a dragon he was. I would burn him alive, showing the world he was no true dragon, and that I would kill anyone that posed a threat to my family. My queen, Jorah kneeled. My interrogation with him revealed some interesting things about him. Apparently he had sworn to serve my brother, but had forsaken that vow when he saw his son. Did I trust him? No. If he was hiding that, the chances of him hiding more stuff from us were high. I trusted no man but Ronard. Is the fire ready? I inquired. Yes, Jorah nodded. Are you sure you want to do this? You are not here to question my orders, just to follow them. I glared at him. As you wish my queen, I will get your brother out. Jorah nodded, leaving the room, going to the dungeons to get Viserys to his execution. He is no brother of mine, I said coldly. Viserys had lost that privilege the moment he aimed his fangs at my family for a second time. Jon Snow POV. Father was alive, and by the looks of it he was already safe. Rumors go that it was Ronard the one who saved him. I was glad beyond comprehension. After months of not being able to sleep well, thinking I would wake up with the news that father was killed, I was finally able to put my mind at ease, and rest. I owned Ronard a big one, not that I would be able to repay him. I was a bastard on the wall, but I would be here for him should he ever need something. Snow. Coming. I shouted back, wondering who was calling me so late at night. Ned Stark POV. Stannis Baratheon, or Ronard Mormont, the difficult choice torturing my mind. The north in part was tired of the southern oppression, and none of the lords in the north actually wanted to bend the knee for Stannis. Some even wanted to put a crown in my head instead. But I was ill-prepared to rule. I was but an honest man, a lord. I would never be fit to be a king. But even if I didn't want to rule, I had to choose a side, Ronard or Stannis. Ronard was loved and extremely popular in the north after he freed me, so I was certain my vassals would not oppose the idea of Ronard sitting on the Iron Throne. He was a northerner that married a dragon. But even though I was bound by honor to Stannis, the legitimate heir of Robert, the decision was hard because a man without honor is no man. I have lived by those principles my entire life. I almost died by them. Robert used to say that honor is not always the answer to everything. And perhaps he was right. Stannis was a good soldier, and great commander, but would perhaps make an ever worse king than Robert himself. I knew what I had to do. I once raised my banners for my family almost 2 decades ago, forsaking my honor and vows, as I fought the Targaryen for their crimes. It was time to do it again. I had an honor debt to both Stannis and Ronard in different ways, and while the choice was hard, I had chosen my side. Ronard. I would help the young bear to win this war. Perhaps all this wretched kingdom needed was a northerner to straighten things up. Call the banners, Rob. We are going home, I told my son, who while confused nodded and left my tent to carry out with his mission. But to ensure our families were always allies, I needed to bound us together by blood. Rob was 17, and Daisy Mormont was 22. If they married, our families would be forever bound by blood. I just hope he accepts, I sighed. Doran Martell POV. War had erupted on the Seven Kingdoms, and so far only my house and house were out of the game. Not for long, like a coiled cobra under the grass, I would wait for the right moment to strike and get revenge for what the Lannisters had done to our family. Oberyn was eager to strike, always so impatient. What he didn't see is that we needed to wait for our allies, Ronard and Daenerys, to come. With their support we would advance towards the Lannisters. Until then, we had to play safe, for the sun always comes back. Euron Greyjoy POV. I had lost my one secret weapon, to a bunch of birds? How was this even possible? One of them had a leather jacket and an eye patch. Something was out of place, but I had no time to figure out what. Without that horn there was little to no chance for me to win this fucking war. So with that in mind, I now had to go and dig a new fucking one in Old Valyria. We are going to Essos, I muttered, ordering my mute men to start preparing the ships. Catelyn Stark POV. Ned has gone crazy. He wanted to bend the knee for Ronard. He wanted help that little no one to get the crown, and not only that but marry our son to his family? I won't allow this, Ned. I cried out angry. Good, because I don't need your approval, Cat. Ned growled back. I'm tired of your paranoia. Ronard is not who you think it is, nor was Jon. You see others that you think are below you as trash, and I'm done, Cat. I'm doing what's best for the North and it's final. Ned has never talked to me like that, so harshly, so cold. Even from afar he was destroying everything. Even from afar Ronard was destroying our family. Chapter 70, Chapter 69. Astapor was right ahead, a few miles away from me. After a month of travel I had finally gotten close to the Slaver City. I was both excited and a bit nervous, because the chances of them reacting poorly to my presence were high, very high. I knew that if a conqueror came to my house trying to buy shit I would probably try to kill him. But that was me, and as I proved so far, everyone seems to be a prideful idiot in this world, thinking that they cannot be killed, or some shit along those lines. But for once I hoped they were dumb, and considered me an idiot, so that I could buy their army and crush them. The city entrance was pretty underwhelming, pretty shit to be honest. It looked like they didn't care for appearances at all. That's the entrance to Astapor, Michael, one of my KO pointed out. Even from afar I could see the old crumbling statue portraying the Astapori harpy atop the harbor gate, noticing nobody has given the poor statue some kind of maintenance in decades. I see, I nodded. The city walls were old and decaying. Everything was as if breaking down anytime soon. How the fuck people that should make a lot of money selling slaves have their city in such a bad state? Taking a deep breath, I continued to descend the hill to Astapor, hoping the city was more welcoming inside. Otherwise I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep that shit on my name. Once I conquered Essos, perhaps I would delegate someone to fix everything, and come back once this looked more decent. Let's go, I sighed. Ned Stark POV. Going back to the north was a bit harder than I would have liked. I had to break Rob's betrothal with House Frey, because they had tricked my son. We already had an agreement of free pass before and the old Frey broke it. But he wasn't one to go back on what he wanted, so I had to pay a toll, a big one to pass. And even though I managed to pass with all my family and army back to the north, I had a distinctive feeling the old Frey was planning something bad for us. But whatever that was, it would prove meaningless in the north. Kat wasn't on speaking terms with me, refusing to acknowledge my existence after I decided to side with Ronard on this war. I hoped that eventually she would let it go, like she did with Jon. Now, it was time to go home, and plan the betrothal with House Mormont to ensure we are tied by blood. Rob wasn't entirely sure about the idea, but accepted nonetheless. Now it was a matter of time whether Ronard would accept our betrothal or reject it. Do you think Daisy is a beautiful woman, father? Rob inquired. I saw her once. I say she's all right. I nodded, with a chuckle. Boys will be boys. Neltharion Mormont Raveniku's POV. Father had tried to leave me in Myr. Little did he know I sneaked inside of one of his carriages. I won't let him get out of my sight. I have to protect him and burn his enemies. It is my duty as his oldest son. He will notice, one of my raven uncles chuckled. Asterisk, he won't. I'm super sneaky, asterisk, I hissed at him. Sure, the raven laughed. No matter what my uncle said, I knew father would not notice. I was the best at hiding. Father had told me so. Ronard Mormont POV. Neltharion, technically my oldest son, thought he could hide from me, but being fair I noticed he was with us halfway here, when I saw his tail peeking out of one of the carriages. I didn't have the heart to tell him he sucked at hide and seek. As a father is my duty to encourage him. Asterisk, you see him, don't you? A raven inquired between chuckles. I do, I chuckled. No he doesn't, Neltharion hissed angrily, followed by 5 full seconds of silence. Damn it. So what are you doing here? I eyed him carefully. One of the reasons I wanted to leave him in Myr was so the greedy assholes of Astapor didn't try anything with him. Well, Neltharion peeked out the car, with an innocent expression and a pair of puppy eyes. I wanted to burn some people that opposed you. First, you do not make puppy eyes because you want to burn people, and second, how the fuck a dog-sized lizard can be cute? I see, was all I could muster to answer. So can I? Neltharion asked excitedly. Later, for now you must stay hidden. This part of my mission is purely diplomatic. I informed the eager dragon. After I obtained the Unsullied, then just then he could go wild hog on them. Okay, Neltharion hissed with a pout. I'll make sure he hides correctly, one Raven said with the utmost confidence. Very well, I nodded giving my approval. Hey, I can hide very well myself. You will follow our command, young chick. As I tuned out their discussion, I started to walk down to the gates of Astapor. The gatekeeper was signaling me to come closer. The thing with Astapor is that people just don't go in if they have an army, reason why I was waiting outside. The masters of the city had to approve of my entrance, and even then, I would only be allowed to enter with my guards. I had informed the gatekeeper of my intentions, and they had told me to wait till I was called. You may come in, the gatekeeper called out. The city was even worse on the inside, people dead on the streets, slaves by their look. The sights were something out of a horror movie, and one with an awfully low budget. After roughly 15 minutes of walking to the deplorable place, I was finally guided inside the castle of the masters. The first one to greet me was Krasnus Mo Naklaus. He was utterly disgusting, with an oiled red and black beard that smelled like shit, and with tits bigger than any woman. What sort of business you are looking for here, stupid brat? The man asked in Valyrian. The master says what sort of business you are looking for here. A little girl beside him said. If I had to take a guess, she was Miss Sandei. Miss Sandei was somewhat similar to the actress that played her role. She had a round flat face, with dusky skin, and eyes like molten gold, but unlike in the show where she was a woman, here she was only 10 or 11 by what I could judge from her height and voice tone. Tell the master, I want to buy every unsullied he has, even the untrained ones, I said with a smile, as I saw the girl translating what I had said. Ha, as if he had enough money to do that, the master laughed. Little did he know I knew how to speak bastard Valyrian. Tell him money is not a problem. Miss Sandei did as she was told, translating once again for me. Each unsullied costs 100 gold dragons in your coin. The total with all the ones we have would be 1,400,000 gold dragons, the master informs, and while I understood I waited for Miss Sandei to translate. After she translated I smiled and said, tell him I'll give him 1,200,000 gold dragons, considering some aren't fully trained. Miss Sandei nodded and translated. The master stood silent for a while as if weighing the options. Tell the idiot we have a deal, the master chuckled. The master accepts your offer, Miss Sandei said. Tell him, I want you as well, that I will throw another 1,000 gold dragons to the deal. I smiled, surprising her. With a nod she translated. The master looked at me and said, you belong to him now, girl. The master accepted, Miss Sandei informed me. Good, tell him, I'll bring him the money in a month, so to please have my things ready by then, I said as I added, you coming with me in the meantime. Once again she translated, and the master accepted. He said your property will be ready in a month, all 14,000 unsullied. Good, let's go, I nodded, with Miss Sandei following me close behind. In the end, everything went as I planned. These people were idiots, for as soon as I got my army, I would end them. Chapter 71, Chapter 70. As I walked out of the slaver city, I smiled at the little Miss Sandei who didn't even dare to look at me, scared I would strike her for it. Patting her head with my hand softly, I smiled as I said, no need to be afraid. Miss Sandei looked at me for a brief moment. This one is yours to do as you please. All I want is an employee, so you are free to do as you please. I chuckled. You aren't a slave anymore. I might have bought you, but all I bought was your freedom. If you decide to stay with us, then it's your choice. Miss Sandei looked at me for a second, confused with what I was telling her. This one is grateful, but this one wants to help you. This one belongs to you. Oh great, it will take some time to make her understand that I am not tricking her. As you wish. By the way, what is your name? I had to ask. While I knew her name, it would save me future questions if I asked her now. This one is named Miss Sandei. Miss Sandei answered, with an emotionless face, showing full. Deciding I would deal with that later, or even better let Daenerys deal with that later, I rode with Miss Sandei to my camp close to Astapor. I had to send a raven to Lys so that I could allocate the funds for this siege in Astapor. It's not like I had the 1,200,000 gold dragons in my pockets at all times. Once I had the gold dragons in my hands, Astapor would fall, and both poetically and ironic their own product would be their downfall. How I love some good poetic justice, I chuckled, imagining the slave masters' faces when I took their city and gold thanks to them. Melisandre POV. Stannis' undoing was written on the fire. He would fall, and from his ashes, my prince would rise. While I didn't know for certain who my prince was, I had a strong and deep feeling it was Ronard Mormont, or the Young Conqueror as some call him. Even Ned Stark had seen his blinding and magnificent light and had chosen to follow him. I even had to stop Stannis from attacking the Starks, for they were loyal servants of my champion, and as part of light, I had to protect them. Ronard was unique in every way, and as the prophecy had foretold, he had started to join the world together, under his banner. All he needed was my guidance, and no one would stand on his mighty way. But first, before becoming entirely his, before letting him use me as his tool, I had to burn his greatest enemies in the west. The Baratheon brothers, both Stannis and Renly, had massive armies. But even they would burn against his might. Renly would die soon, and I would use Stannis to do it. Using Stannis' life force, I would use the shadows to eliminate Renly. The only problem was that I had to have sex with him to do it. After all, a shadow is a type of magical creature born from the light, that uses a man essence to be born. I didn't want Stannis touching me anymore, the idea was horrid for me. I was born to be the most loyal servant to the prince that was promised. Serving Stannis in any way was utterly disgusting. But I would do it for my prince. Renly Baratheon POV. I loved Loras, he is and will be forever my everything, my sweet rose of joy and passion. Every time he was out fighting, my heart would drop a beat, thinking he would come back dead. But I knew the gods were protecting him, for he was mine. If only people noticed that I was fit to be a king and stopped opposing me, things would be better. I was born for the crown, but nobody seemed to see that. Lord Stark went as far as to pick a brat over me. What a disappointment. My king, Lady Tyrell is here to see you, one of my rainbow knights said, entering my chambers. Margaery Tyrell, my betrothed, I had to marry her if I wanted to keep House Tyrell on my side. The idea of betting her disgusted me to no end. If only she was Loras, things would be different. But even a mighty king like me has to make some sacrifices. Send her in. My king, Margaery smiled, as she entered my chambers. Stannis Baratheon POV. Ned Stark had chosen to follow the Mormont brat, instead of me. Where was his honor? His loyalty? If there was someone I thought I could get on my side, was him. He was supposed to be bound by honor to me. And yet he threw all that honor away because the young bear saved his life. Pathetic. I wanted to march against him and show him what happens when you betray your king, but Melisandre stopped me, saying this was part of the prophecy, that I had to leave the north alone until I had the crown. As the champion of light, I had to respect the prophecies, I had to respect what Melisandre said, so for now, the Starks would live. Maege Mormont POV. Unexpected things had come since Ronard was born, but none compared to what had happened a week ago. Not only the Starks were pledging their loyalty to Ronard, acknowledging him as their king, but they also wanted to unite our families with blood by marrying their heir Robb Stark to my daughter Daisy Mormont. I had of course accepted, letting the Starks know that Daisy and Ronard had the option to break the betrothal should they feel the betrothal is not fitting. And just as I was sending the raven to House Stark with my answer, was the point where I knew I had lived too long. We went from one of, if not the smallest house in the Seven Kingdoms, to a royal family. Everything in less than a decade. He made the impossible, possible. He was both feared and loved, and I knew he would make a great king, not because he is my family, but because whatever he touches turns gold. I'm too old for this shit, I chuckled. Tywin Lannister POV. Lord Stark had left the battlefield with his banners, going back to the north. Apparently, he had pledged his loyalty to the young bear. That was very unexpected but was also just what we needed. The Starks were in their own way a force to be reckoned with, one that could potentially change the tide of this war, if they happened to join an active side of it. But they didn't. Ronard Mormont, while a player of this war game, was as of this moment an inactive player. He would join soon, that much was certain, but that could take months or even years. So the Starks joining him now didn't affect us in the immediate future, for all it meant to us now was that we had fewer enemies to fight off. This, of course, would affect us in the long run, but I liked the long run. It gave me time to plan to craft his fall. Things have just gotten easier for us, I smiled. For once this war was starting to look promising for us. Ronard Mormont POV. I had sent the raven to Lys, and all I had to do now was wait for a month, maybe more depending on things. But I would take advantage of this situation, learning as much as I could from Missandei. Like, how Astapor worked, how loyal were the Unsullied, what animals were common in Essos, and how was the slave-free man ratio in each city. This month would prove to be quite educational, but that was just one of the things I would do during this time. After noticing that my poor ravens were not only being overworked but also were falling short to cover 2 full continents for me, I decided to expand my animal friends. With the help of Neltharion, a few of my ravens, and Missandei knowledge, I would hunt for any animal that had any utility to me. From rats to hawks, anything was possible. Are you ready to hunt? I asked eagerly to the confused little girl. This one is pleased to help you, Missandei said. She seems off, Neltharion hissed, scaring her. I had forgotten entirely that she had yet to see him. A dragon. Missandei was scared and fascinated. Asterisk and dumb, what else can I be? A mutant gecko, asterisk, Neltharion hissed with a lot of sass. Yes, a dragon, or mutant gecko, your pick, I chuckled. Hey, a mutant gecko hissed in the background. Chapter 72, Chapter 71. 1 month later. The money I needed was finally here, 1,200,000 gold dragons. With it, I would buy the Unsullied and destroy Astapor. During this month, I had increased my animal friends with different animals. I had acquired 200 owls, 3,000 rats, 2,000 mice, and around 200 new snakes. It was in the end quite a productive month. Now it was time to move forward and show the masters the power of irony. Missandei, today will be the fall of Astapor. I smiled at the little girl, who looked at me for a second with confusion flowering inside of her. During this month she had tried to figure out what type of master I was, expecting physical, or perhaps sexual abuse. But I had proven her multiple times that I was not like the bastards she served in Astapor. A part of her already knew this, but she was still reluctant to believe such thing existed and was afraid to let her guard down. But we were getting there. This one will be your side. Missandei smiled almost imperceptibly. Can I burn them now? Neltharion inquired as he got out of the bed. I looked at Neltharion, who had grown a lot during this month, going from dog size to bear size, and smiled. Yes, yes you can. Neltharion looked at me with a wide smile as he hissed, asterisk, you won't regret it, Dad. I will burn them all, I'll make you proud, Asterisk. I chuckled at his enthusiasm. Yes you will. The Plaza of Pride was just like everything in Astapur, in a pitiful state that made you wonder how the fuck they got to that point, but I wasn't here for the sights anyways. I was here for the Unsullied. With them I would destroy the city and rebuild it from the ashes. My plan was simple, to use their own product to destroy them, but it seemed the master's stupidity was beyond what even I had expected, because not only they were selling me every Unsullied soldier available in their rooster, with a few minor exceptions, but they had also allowed my army to enter the city this time. So instead of the original 14,000 soldiers I expected to have during this raid, because I expected them to have some brains, or at least a sense of self-preservation, I would have around 29,000 soldiers and a dragon, which would make this siege, this massacre incredibly easy. Do you have the money? The master inquired in Bastard Valley Ryan with a greedy smile. I do, I answered. Miss Sandai was by my side, but I had instructed her to be silent. I wanted to be the one dealing with the masters for today. Oh, the little bitch taught you some Valley Ryan. The master laughed with some concern. No, but it's my wife's mother language, I chuckled, letting him know that I knew before buying Miss Sandai how to speak Valley Ryan, so how about we do this? The master eyed me for a second before nodding. Let's. With a smile, I ordered my men to start bringing the treasure chests with the gold coins I had promised them. Each chest had around 100,000 gold dragons, so in total I had brought 12 treasure chests. The master had his slaves count the money as he offered me during this time some tea or women to fuck while we waited. I obviously rejected his offers, for anything coming from him disgusted me. After a few hours, the count was finally done. Well, this was certainly a pleasure, the master said with a disgusting smile, giving me a whip, also known as harpy fingers, as the Unsullied started to march into the plaza. The harpy's fingers is the name of the whip used to scourge slaves in Astapur. Taking a deep breath, I looked at the whip. The handle was made of something black that was elaborately carved. It also had 9 leather lashes trail from it, each tipped by a gilded claw. The pommel had a woman's head with pointed ivory teeth. This whip was given to new masters of the Unsullied as a mark of payment. Will they obey any command? I inquired with a smile. The master laughed. My beautiful creatures will obey any command you give them. Unsullied, jump once. I commanded, and without hesitation they did as they were told. Kneel. Once again they followed my order without hesitation. I told you, blindly loyal, the master said with pride. And that will be your outdoing. Blind loyalty, good to know. Turning to my Unsullied, looking at them with a smile, I said, Unsullied. Slay the masters? Slay every soldier? Slay every man who holds a whip but harm no children? And strike off the chains of every soldier. Once again without hesitation the Unsullied did as they were told, and started to slay the masters in the plaza. The master looked at me with panic as he shouted to the Unsullied while pointing at me, I am your master. Kill him, kill him. I smiled, holding the whip close to his face. Not anymore. With that said and done, I decided to make things even more poetic by whipping the master to his grave, as my newly acquired Unsullied battalion alongside my Kalasar started to take over the city. Time to burn, Neltharion hissed, flying above the city. Good heavens, I had instructed him to only burn the masters. Ser Bari Stan Selmi POV. Joffrey had dismissed me from the Kingsguard, saying I was too old to be serving as a knight, but that wasn't the real reason behind my discharge. In an unprecedented and unexpected move from Lord Varys, I had been discharged under the grounds that I did not keep King Robert safe, and that age was starting to hit me. But that was just the tip of this political iceberg. I was old, not senile. I knew the Lannisters' motivations were to allow the brat to give a white cloak to his dog, Sandor Clegane, and to allow Queen Cersei Lannister to place her brother Jaime as the new Lord Commander with a seat on the small council. I was angry at this. I had served against my beliefs for my entire life, and this is how I get paid for my services, but I was also happy. After all, I've burned away my years fighting for terrible kings. As man of honor I had to keep my vows, even if I was serving a drunk or a lunatic. And just for once in my life, before it comes to an end, I want to know what it's like to serve with pride, to fight for someone I believe in. With that in mind, with the opportunity to serve someone I believed in, I was on my way to Essos. I will use what is left of my life to clean my sins with my blade, I muttered, holding the hilt of my blade tight. Tywin Lannister POV. I leave for 1 week, 1 fucking week, and my children fuck everything once again? While it was true Ser Bari Stan Selmy was old, his name brought fear into the hearts of our enemies. An asset we needed more than ever. But the idiot I had for a daughter had to meddle in matters that didn't concern her and hurt our side even more. If the old knight decided to serve Renly, Stannis, or the Mormont brat, it would hurt us to no end. I now had to do some damage control, before things escalated. It's almost like my children want to lose this war, I muttered. Back to Ronard POV. Taking Astapor was easy. After a few hours, I had complete and absolute control over the city. I was richer, because while the city looked shit, it was loaded with gold, literally. My army was still pulling gold out of the city, and by my estimate, I had not only recovered what I had paid for the Unsullied but had made that about over 10 times already. My army was officially in the 100,000s, counting the men I had on Westeros. Things were going great today for me. You really meant what you said, Miss Sandai said in disbelief. I do, I nodded, ruffling her hair a bit. Take a good look around, for this is what will happen to every slaver in the known world. Missandei stood silent for a second, seeing the dead masters on the streets, before she turned her gaze to me with a smile. You said that it was this one choice if this one wanted to serve you or not. Well, this one wants to. This one want to serve the breaker of chains, the father of dragons, the Kull of the West. This one want to serve you. Holy moly, I stole Daenerys' mojo, and I'll be glad to have you under my wings. Chapter 73. Chapter 72. After taking full and absolute control over Astapor, with my first order of business being that slavery was illegal and that all slaves were free to choose their own path, I left the city, leaving a small army of 5,000 men to protect it as I rode with the rest of my army off to Myr, where I would meet with Daenerys and my babies. Coming to Astapor had opened my eyes to many interesting problems in my plan. Logistically speaking, every time I conquered a city I had to leave behind some type of army to defend it, which in the end, would leave me short of men. The only way to avoid that was to completely destroy any opposition. And considering that so far I had personally conquered 3 cities, 4 if I counted Tyrosh that was conquered by one of my generals during my time in Astapor, things were looking bad for me in the future. In each city I had been leaving around 5,000 soldiers to defend my new lands from sieges and raids from nearby cities that decided it was their time to shine, leaving my usable army in the 75,000s, at the moment, instead of the almost 100,000 I had in total. While 75,000 men were indeed a big army, at the pace I was dwindling my own numbers for logistical reasons I would end up with almost none. Myr 5,000 men. Lys 5,000 men. Tyrosh 5,000 men. Astapor 5,000 men. In total I had 20,000 men out of my hands, but now that I had noticed this problem, those numbers could and would be improved. For example, the islands didn't need that many men to protect them, the Krakens were all the defenses they needed, so I could lower the numbers on those to 1,000 men each island and it would be more than enough. Now, the earth-bound cities needed the soldiers I had on them, mostly to avoid putting me in a situation where I had to conquer a city twice, so as now the only way to shorten the amount of men I had off my hands was by taking some from the islands. Is there anything this one can do for you? Missandei offered. Not for now, I chuckled. By the way, you can refer to yourself with I, you know, instead of this one. This. I was taught I wasn't a person but an object. It's hard. Missandei smiled at me, as she tried to speak normally, struggling a lot to do it. Then that is my mission for you, I smiled, ruffling her hair. From now on, I want you to focus on erasing that idea off your head. I understand. I will do my best. Missandei smiled. I turned to her with a smirk on my face. I don't want you to try. Trying means failure is possible. I want you to do it, to succeed. Missandei looked at me for a brief moment, still probably questioning why was I doing all of this, before she nodded. I will do it. Atta girl, I chuckled. Daenerys POV 1 month prior. The public execution for Viserys started. My brother begged me to forgive him. But I had lost all the empathy I had for him a long time ago, and he killed the Ashes when he threatened my children. By fire we forged our path, and by fire he would die. Dany, please, I beg you, don't do this. I'm your brother, your king. Please, I'm sorry. Viserys cried, snot falling down his nose. You are no brother of mine, you are no king of mine, you are nothing, I said with a cold tone, and in cue both Crow and Rhaegal flew out of their rooms, scaring Viserys. Dany, please. Viserys cried out once again, for everyone to see. Dracarys. Soon after those words left my mouth, both Crow and Rhaegal set my brother to flames. His screams of pain lasted about 3 seconds, before he was turned to ashes, showing the world he was no dragon, for flames can't hurt a dragon. Be this a reminder, that I will do anything to protect my family, I said as I walked out of the execution area with Crow and Rhaegal, leaving behind turmoil of emotions in the crowd. Some cheered for me, mostly the Ironborn, some feared me, and others respected me. People will forever remember this, Daisy said with a concerned tone. Good, let it be a reminder that there isn't someone I wouldn't kill to protect my husband and children. Daenerys POV now. Ronard has conquered Astapor, and along the way had increased our numbers with 14,000 unsullied warriors. In his absence Tyrosh had fallen under the might of our navy, and our sweet little bundles of joy had grown so much. Gerald was so big now, and was crawling like a little monkey everywhere, never getting tired, always looking to play, unlike Alyssa, who was her twin total opposite, calm and well-behaved, sleeping almost all the time, but even with her calm attitude I would find Gerald corrupting his sister to do crazy baby stuff, like I would find Alyssa forcing Gerald to take a nap. Every day I would get a new surprise, a new reason to smile with them, but also a reason to be sad. I was sad Ronard was missing all of this, I knew and understood why, but it was still sad. Don't be sad, my queen, Daisy said, reading my face like a book. The king is coming in a month to Myr, you will see him there and so will the little cubs. I just wish we could be together at all times, I smiled. Once this war ends, I'm sure that wish will come true, Daisy smiled. Illyrio Mopedus POV. Myr had fallen, and so did Astapor, and I was sure by this point that monster knew I had a hand in his assassination attempt. If I didn't do something I would die. He had an army few could hope to match, 3 dragons that one day would grow to be beasts of unparalleled power and the money to fund all that. But I had something he didn't. Experience, decades of experience. I knew I wasn't enough to kill him, but with the help of Bravos, he was as good as dead. This plan you have. is too expensive. If it fails, we can't do it again, the representative of the Iron Bank commented, and he was right. My plan to kill Ronard and his army was expensive, and it would put me on a crippling debt with the Iron Bank, but as long as Ronard existed, the young Griff would never get the crown. Don't worry, I only need one shot, and all that brat built will fall like a house of cards, I smiled. Peter Baelish POV. Things weren't going quite as planned. A small player became the most prominent player overnight. I had lost my position as the master of coin. The despicable Ned Stark had survived, closing any possible relationships for me with the Starks. After all, I did sell him out. But with time I would turn this to my favor. If the bear ended up winning, I was sure with the right preparation I could manipulate the young bear to my favor. I just had to find what made the young bear tick. Lord Baelish, Varys said, entering my establishment. Varys, to what do I owe this pleasure? I inquired sarcastically. Save the lies for the court. Now how about we talk about John Ares? Varys smiled, taking a seat. Varys knew how the old disgusting man had died, but he also knew who had requested such a thing. He couldn't use that against me, so what was the little spider trying to do? By all means, let's, I smiled. Margaery Tyrell POV. I was to marry in a few days I would be queen. The only bad part was that my king didn't find women appealing at all, but that hardly mattered. I didn't care where or in whom he put his manhood inside, as long as his seed was delivered to me. If I gave him an heir, my position as the queen would be forever sealed. After that I couldn't care less if he slept with Loras for the rest of his life. Soon I'll be a queen, I smiled, begging the gods to help me get with a child fast. Chapter 74, Chapter 73. After a month of traveling, I was finally in Myr, where Daenerys was waiting for me with open arms with our babies. I was surprised by how big the twins were. It is truly remarkable how babies grow during the first months of their life. You bought all the Unsullied? Daenerys asked, after my dose of kisses and baby hugs. Yes, but they are free men now, I nodded, because like she did in the show I too had given them their freedom, but they had decided to follow me, with Grey Worm as general. We keep getting stronger, Daenerys smiled. Yes we do, I said with a baby voice while holding the twins, making the twins laugh. PFF, Daenerys giggled. Oh by the way, there is someone I think will be of great help to you, I said, remembering I had yet to present her to Miss Sandai. Daenerys and her were best friends on the show, so perhaps they could do the same here. Who? Daenerys inquired with curiosity sparkling in her eyes. Miss Sandai, she was a slave translator, but I feel you two will get along, I said. A translator, well, I do like learning new languages, Daenerys hummed, well, I don't see why not. Great, I smiled. What is your next step after this? Daenerys inquired. I had taken 4 cities, 3 of the free ones. The same, I said, after all, there wasn't much of a change. I want to help you more, Daenerys sighed, kneeling before me, kissing my hand in a lovely way, let me, please. I eyed her for a second, deep in thought. She could really help, but I didn't want to risk her or my babies getting hurt, so I had found something that wasn't as lethal. And then it dawned on me, I've been dealing with the conquests and the aftermatch of those by myself, but she could deal with the aftermatches for me. I do have something you could do, that would help me a big deal, I nodded. I need to deal with the aftermatches when I conquer a city. I'll be the one taking them down, and you'll be the one to assimilate them. Daenerys smiled, that way you don't have to stay in a city for too long, right? Exactly, I nodded. I suppose I can do only that for now, Daenerys said, eyeing the dragons. Ser Barristan Selmy POV. The waters to Essos were tough and unforgiving, killing many men on my way to this continent, but I was finally here. I had to find the young bear, a man fighting against slavery and raiding was a man worth giving my last few years of service. I was old, I knew one day I would fail my swing. I would fail to block or to dodge. I wanted to do something good with my life while I still could. Rumors said he was in Myr at the moment, and would leave soon. In a month or less I would be his blade. Melisandre POV. I was pregnant, with the tool to destroy Renly Baratheon. Using his older brother essence I would birth the light minion to kill Renly. Then I would proceed to lead Stannis wrong so that he and the lions destroyed each other to the point of exhausting their own resources and men, so that when my beautiful prince finally crosses the continued and comes all he has to do is sit and rule the ashes these false kings left behind. But I had to be careful. Stannis believed in me, but was an impulsive man. Should he feels I was leading him wrong he will kill me, and I'm quite not ready to die just yet. I've been waiting 400 years for this, to serve my prince in anything he might desire, an assassin, a lover, or a friend. I would be his in body and mind. Just wait my prince, the light will unite us, I'll be anything you need. Asterisk Ka. This bitch is crazy, asterisk. For him, yes I am. I eyed the raven on my window. The fire had told me his animals were more than the eye could see, and the fire had blessed me to understand them, and I was overjoyed my beautiful, perfectly magnificent prince decided to keep an eye on me. Tell my prince, I will help him from here. Olenna Tyrell POV. The young bear had conquered yet another city, acquiring on the way an army of unsullied soldiers, increasing his already terrifying army. Alongside Renly's banners we had a bit over 100,000 soldiers. People would tremble before our army, that's what I would say, if I didn't know better. We had nothing but flowers going to war, men with no experience, with no idea how to hold a sword, wearing fancy armors. A soldier is only as good as his knowledge of the battlefield, reason why we were losing this war so bad. The idiot of my son had the worst case of tunnel vision possible. Hiring and drafting any men he could to war was like giving blind monkeys knives and letting them loose in the battlefield, but at least the monkeys would win more. My son thought numbers won wars, which was the most idiotic thought any man could have. Maybe I drank too much with him on my belly. Experience wins wars, knowledge wins wars. Otherwise you might as well throw babies into the battlefield and expect them to win because they outnumber the enemy. We had nothing useful, but the young bear had savages that had learned to kill just to eat, soldiers that were trained since they were nothing but toddlers to be the pinnacle of discipline, northerners that had to adapt to harsh conditions to survive, and the best navy in Westeros. Compared to that, I had to be realistic. We had no chance. Illyrio Mopetus POV. The Alchemist Guild would give the tool to destroy the Bear of Essos, the so-called Cull of the West. 2 tons of wildfire, to destroy him and his army. This of course would be expensive and truly hard to accomplish, but I knew where he would eventually be. At one point he would come to Pentos, and I would burn the city with him. You won't see it coming, monster, I laughed. Asterisk yes he will, you idiot, you are the one that won't see us the Raven Knights when we take you down. Cave, asterisk. What an annoying bird, I muttered wondering why all of the sudden there were so many ravens on Pentos. Euron Greyjoy POV. Since, some, ravens had stolen my dragon horn, I had sailed back Old Valeria with one thing in mind, well to avoid the fucking usurper, and get my horn. I was fearless not stupid, with 1,000 men I had no chance of winning, he would have my head on his wall in less than an hour. But no one knew these waters like me, so avoiding him and getting the horn would be like fucking a nice pussy or killing a man, easy. 3 more days, and we'll get to Valeria boys. I shouted as I laughed, oh yeah I forgot none of you can talk. Dario Naharis POV. A conquered was among us, and frankly he was having a lot of success, quite the fearsome warrior the Cull of the West is, or the young bear as some call him. With an army of 100,000 soldiers, and his apparent strategic genius, I doubted he would have much opposition during his mission, and while many hated him I didn't because thanks to the threat he represented we got quite the juicy contract with Yunkai. But that only meant I would have to kill him, and to be honest if the rumors of his prowess in battle are half true, I'm more fucked than a new whore in a brothel. Huh? I suppose things are getting interesting regardless, I laughed. Grey Worm POV. Our owner. No, our king was a powerful man, a warrior of unparalleled strength and discipline, that danced on the battlefield like no one else. He was strong, someone worth fearing. But he was also kind like no one else. He broke our chains, he killed our jailers, he gave us something we had lost, years ago, hope. Hope for a better tomorrow, hope for a better life, and for that, he would have our undying loyalty, for the Unsullied would follow him to hell and back if needed. Comment. 50 comment. Chapter 75, Chapter 74. Before leaving for my next conquest on the list, I was informed by my ravens of a few things. 1. Ser Barry Stan Selmy was coming this way to pledge himself to me. 2. Illyrio was baking quite the diabolical plan, with an idea that might just work if he plays his cards right. He had commissioned a literal ton of wildfire to destroy me and my army, with the help of Bravus. 3. Melisandre knew I was the champion of her god and for some reason probably related to her that she now could talk with my animals, and promised me she would kill Renly. And 4. Ned Stark and the entire North had pledged themselves to me. These bits of new information changed everything for me because if I didn't act fast my army would be erased from existence by the volatile power that Dragon Vegan Fire the Alchemist Guild was making. I knew Illyrio was planning something, that much was obvious, but one thing was wanting to kill me, and another was to basically create the equivalent of a nuke on this time just for me. And not only was he planning on using one if not the most dangerous substances in the world but he also went as far as to using his city as a bait for me, meaning he would burn millions just to see me wrong. I gotta hand it to him, I misjudged his character. He isn't a spineless little pig, he's a spineless little monster. I never thought he would go that far to get rid of me. Assassination attempts? Sure. Political plots? Obviously. But mass murder of his own people to accomplish his goal? Never. He was darker I thought, by a big margin. The worst part about this was that it could actually work. Not with me. I was now apparently immune to fire, though I am not entirely sure if that applies to vegan fire, and I'm not looking forward to test that out, but regardless of my immunity to the fire, his plan could work, not as intended but it could still hurt me on the political run. 1 ton of wildfire was more than enough to vaporize my army, and even if he doesn't kill me, leaving me without an army would fuck my entire plan and possibly the world. So I couldn't just sit and let him wait for the key of my destruction to be delivered at his door. I had to attack fast and now. Perhaps this was the result of my approach being too passive, and while that approach was the right call at the beginning, it wasn't now. Now I needed to bare my fangs and claws out and show them what happens when you mess with the bears. Change of plans? We are going to Pentos, all of us. I would march with my 100,000 me to Pentos, taking the city and at the same time I would attack Bravus, killing apparently the 2 biggest pseudo-threats I had right now before they grew to be real threats with real means to destroy my work. Without those 2 in my side, I would be able to take Essos with little to no opposition. Ned Stark POV. Maedge had accepted our betrothal a few months ago, which meant our alliance was sealed by blood and honor. All I had to do now was wait for him to come so that we could march south and take the throne. Rumors said he had 100,000 soldiers, that alongside the 40,000 the North could provide should be more than enough to win. Father, Rob said, entering my solar. Yes. I inquired. We have a letter from Renly. He said should we join him he will forgive our sins, Rob said reading the letter. Renly had been quite the pain since he heard we didn't pledge to his brother, sending ravens with passive threats with the underline always being the same, join me or die. Send him the usual response. I sighed. Yes, father. Rob nodded leaving my solar. Doran Martell POV. Ned Stark had joined Ronard's side. With his support and ours the young bear would surely win the throne, and we would have the revenge we have desired for so many years. Together we would crush the Lannisters for what they did and get the justice we deserved. I heard the North joined the young bear. At first I didn't believe it, but the wolf moved his army back to the north, as he waits for him to come. Oberyn Diaz as he entered my room. Are we still to hide, brother? Or are we ready to show that snakes of Dorne pay their debts? Oberyn for once was right to be impatient. We finally had a tangible path to justice. We will follow the wolf's path. Oberyn stood silence for a second, clearly not expecting my answer. After a few seconds he composed and smiled. Gladly. I will call our banners, and let the North know we are their allies in this mission, I informed Oberyn, who looked at me confused. What about me? Oberyn inquired. You will go to Essos with an army, to help the young bear come back home, so that we can destroy the Lannisters. I smiled. Oberyn smiled at that. It will be my honor. Melisandre POV. The time had come for me to birth the tool to help my prince, the tool to eliminate his enemies. Pain, incandescent pain invaded every corner of my body, taking hold of my being, but this was nothing, for I would suffer 1,000,000 times more just to ensure my prince wins, just to ensure he fulfills the prophecy. Ah! I cried in pain, as the shadow left my body, blood dripping everywhere, and the only ones present to witness this was Davos. How fortunate of him to witness how I vanquished the enemies of my prince. Kill Renly, I gave the shadow the order, the reason for its short existence, a task he would most undoubtedly carry out with no problems. The shadows crawled close to me, as if giving his mother one last look before dying. Before phasing off the cave I gave birth in, going straight to Renly. My prince, that's one. I hope you see my love for you has no bounds. I smiled, knowing every minute of pain I was and had suffered so far was nothing compared to the lengths I would go to just for him. This can't be right, Davos muttered. This can't be light. Poor ignorant soul, all shadows are born from light. I smiled. Ronard Mormont POV 2 weeks later. As I rode with my army to Pentos, I found along the way the old knight who wanted to join me. After a brief discussion with him, I decided to let him join my ranks, for in reality he was a really good knight that wasn't entirely bad. He was just your typical soldier that followed bad kings. He wanted to be the captain of my Kingsguard, and considering I technically didn't have I agreed, but in reality I was thinking of creating something in the Fuerte more along the lines of a round table for my knights and council, where every man would have a voice, and help me rule. But first I had to deal with Pentos, and then Bravus. I had to strike fast and strong, as to not give them any opportunity to fight back. If Bravus fell, the rest of Essos would be a piece of cake. With this siege I didn't have much of a plan. Pentos didn't have an army, nor any mighty walls to take down. They were weak, reason why they had been buying the Kells out of their city. Bravus was the real challenge here, with more money that anyone can possibly imagine and a fierce army they would give my army a challenge. Let's set camp people. Tomorrow we won't stop until Pentos is on their knees and their Magister is dead. I shouted, rallying my men a bit. For the Cull of the West. For the Breaker of Chains. For the King of the Seven Kingdoms. For the Father of Dragons and Emperor of the New World. For the Young Bear. I smiled, as I heard them chant each and every single one of my titles, that somehow seemed to grow in numbers every day. Chapter 76, Chapter 75. Arriving at Pentos created a turmoil of emotions for me. For one I was extremely angry with Illyrio and wanted to kill him making sure he suffered a lot, but conquering Pentos took approximately 2 hours and had little to no bloodshed whatsoever. Apparently the high nobles of Pentos were quite the rational bunch, with the majority of them kneeling to save their lives and positions, which in turn made capturing Illyrio a really easy task. He tried to escape on one of his personal boats, probably seeing how his idiotic actions had backfired and that his only option was trying to escape, but sadly he was mysteriously eaten by sea creature. I really hope my poor Kraken doesn't get an indigestion. With Illyrio dead, Pentos was officially mine, though it still felt kinda off to win so easy, but I won't complain, things like this rarely happen. What are our orders? Ser Baristan inquired. We take control of the city and its assets and then we move to Bravus in 2 of 3 weeks too. I informed my war council as I left the room. What they didn't know was that the real reason I was waiting was because of Oberyn Martell and the army he was bringing an army to support me, and push me to go with him to Westeros. Which was an idea that had already occurred to me, because after taking Bravus under my control, which was by far the biggest threat on this side of the sea for me, I would be able to leave this continent and focus on the Iron Throne, leaving Daenerys behind. I would leave Daenerys with a small part of my army to protect her and the cities we had already taken, and with that I would move all my attention solely on Westeros, attacking the kingdom while it was weak and vulnerable. Taking a deep breath, I decided to go to the kitchen and prepare something good. It had been quite a while since I had eaten anything made by me, being a lord and stuff. And much to my horror Westeros didn't have any pizzas or hamburgers, so I had to improvise to emulate those delicious godlike creations. As I walked to the kitchen, Daenerys approached me with the twins who were stretching their arms begging to be with their dear old dad. Smiling, my beautiful wife inquired, "Where are you going?" "To the kitchen. I want to make some burgers, and now that I'm a dad it feels just right," I answered with a smile. Daenerys looked at me for a second before she asked with curiosity, "What is a hamburger?" "One of the many items any dad needs to know how to make, is parenting one-on-one." I chuckled. If she wanted to know she would have to eat one. The burgers were a massive success. Maybe I'll rip McDonald's off. My family seemed to love them, including my old man who even helped me with the grill, and while I'm still angry with him, I couldn't call that hate anymore. After everything everyone had done to me during the last few years, he really doesn't seem so bad. Technically the assholes of this world made him look good by comparison, and if I had to be rational about it, he wasn't inherently a bad person, just the most stupid person I have ever met, and that's bad, but not batshit evil Cersei level. So, I decided to give him a chance, because why not? He already had enough punishment with not being able to hold any lands or ever restore his lord title. He had no power over me, and he seemed to be trying to atone really hard. "These burgers are amazing," Jorah said, trying to make some small talk. "Sad attempt, but keep trying," I chuckled, leaving him behind. "These are really good," Daenerys complimented. "Maybe we can make a business out of it." And there it was, my influence on her showing off. I was thinking the same. "How about we call the business Corn Donald's?" I chuckled. Daenerys giggled, which in turn made the babies laugh with her. "Sure, we can also sell some corn, I suppose." I kneeled to the baby's level and with a baby voice said, "And our mascot will be Ronald Corn Donald." "I already exist, master." Out of nowhere a raven that kinda looked like the Joker flew to my shoulder. Existence is pain, master. Our lives are fleeting before us. Don't you understand, master? With every cornless day the dark and sweet kiss of death comes closer and closer, waiting for us, haunting our dreams, and there will be a night where we will dream no more, where we will gasp for air but our bodies will fail, and all we can do every night is pray today isn't our night, but even then we can't never forget that fateful day is just in the horizon, waiting for us, and we will have to walk through it, and that's the one absolute truth in our lives, no matter our standing. Holy fucking corn. That was dark. That raven is scaring me. Daenerys smiled awkwardly. Me too, I nodded, while thinking, Jesus fucking Christ, was the real Ronald McDonald this dark? I need time to process this, Neltharion hissed. Antidepressants he needs, for too dark that was, Rhoda said after a second. After a day of nothing but having fun together, and that incident with Ronald Corn Donald, I decided to sleep. In a few weeks I would be marching to Bravos, and then to Westeros. Things were not going quite as I planned, but things were working nonetheless, and you don't try to fix something that is working. Oberyn Martell POV. I was 2 weeks away from Pentos, and I never been happier. Our justice, our vengeance, soon I would make those who hurt my sweet sister lay with blood. The Mountain, Tywin Lannister, and Amory Lorch, they in particular would pay for what they did. I would make sure of that. The day of justice is coming. Are you seeing this, Elia? Your brother will finally avenge you. I smiled at the sky, for when the sun shone it was my sweet Elia smiling at me from above. Ned Stark POV. The Martells has joined us, saying they could support us with over 40,000 me, that along what Ronard and the North had was more than enough to crush the lions in the south. An army of 180,000 soldiers, no matter how good of a strategist that old lion is, he was massively outnumbered. And while I was happy Ronard had the Martells' support, I was surprised. They didn't ask for anything, no money, no betrothal, no nothing. Perhaps they were joining to make the Lannisters pay for what they did to Elia Martell. Regardless of their reason, this made Ronard's claim massively better than it was before. Ronard is up for a surprise, I chuckled. Arya Stark POV. Ronard was coming, I could feel it. Father had joined his side and so did the Snakes of Dorne. There was just a matter of time before he became our king. Knowing this, I focused even harder on my training. I had to help him. He saw talent in me when no one else did. He was the first friend I had outside my family, and whether he likes it or not he is part of our pack, and I will protect him when the time comes. Arya, stop playing like a boy with that blade. Mother yelled at me, angry. I won't. I will be the first female Kingsguard, leave me alone. I shouted back. I won't accept this. Mother growled. I will be a battle lady, like Ronard said. I stood my ground. That man is no king of ours, and no lady needs a blade. Mother said, trying to take my blade. And what do you want, Mother? Sansa entered the room with a faint getting between Mother and I. All you are teaching us is how to open our legs, and frankly that curriculum lacks a lot. Or maybe it doesn't. I'm sure that opening our legs will work if we lose a battle and some men try to rape us. Sansa? I will not tolerate this. You are out of line. I will. Mother tried to say, but Sansa cut her. We have Father's permission. You are the one out of line. Sansa replied calmly, which in turn made Mother slap Sansa on the face as she stormed out of the room. Wow, that was awesome. I said, smiling at my sister. I suppose I am. Sansa giggled, rubbing her face, but do try to avoid her when training. I don't want to be slapped on a daily basis. Will do, I laughed. Chapter 77, Chapter 76. 3 weeks passed since the grill day. Oberyn had yet to arrive, but I wasn't going to wait for him any longer, and I was already outside Bravos at my war camp close, that was conveniently a few miles away from them, which apparently triggered the Bravos CC Lord because I was awakened by one of my Raven scouts who tells me that our camp will be under attack soon. which made me glad I had decided to left Daenerys behind on Pentos for this one with 5,000 soldiers, while I fought the Bravasi right now. With a grunt, I jump out of the bed and looked outside down the hill, confirming that a large group of soldiers was indeed approaching. Seeing they were at much 1 hour away, I quickly dressed as grabbed my weapons. Get ready, Bravus is coming, I shouted loud and clear for all my men to hear. The Unsullied were already ready and alert, with the Dothraki being the second part of my army to follow suit. They have a dialogue flag. One of my men shouted, so they wanted to talk. Well, let's. Bravus wasn't like any other place in this world, they were kind of democratic with the power structure. By kinda I mean the position of Sea Lord is not hereditary, and is given in a pseudo-electoral way, that works, kind of fishy. One of Bravus's citizens is chosen to be Sea Lord by the city's magisters and bankers through a convoluted and arcane process, meaning the populace has no vote whatsoever, and only wins the most malleable man. The choosing process apparently is intense by how the rumors go, but once chosen, the new Sea Lord serves for life. Bravus' current Sea Lord was Farrago Antarion. All I know about him is that he is a member of House Antarion, a noble house, and that he is who currently serves as the current Sea Lord of Bravus. But a Sea Lord was nothing without his sword. Each Sea Lord selects their first sword, who serves as their champion, captain of the guard, and ambassador sometimes. They were known for their immense prowess in battle and unique fighting style. Caro Valentin was the current first sword of Bravus, and probably the man I would have to kill soon enough. Welcome, Lord Mormont, the Sea Lord greeted with a disapproving look on his face. Is king, please be sure to remember that for whoever long you have, I said with a playful tone, letting him know he meant nothing to me. See, at first, I wasn't so sure about conquering Bravus, they seemed like an alright place, so the idea of opening a peaceful dialogue with them occurred to me once or twice, but the moment they allowed someone to commission a ton of fucking wildfire, well, let's just say I don't have any more doubts. Bravus and the Iron Bank are one. The fucking bankers are an important part of their electoral process, which means they knew of this crazy project and still allowed it. Fuck them with capital F. Do you really think this will end well for you? The Sea Lord inquired with an apathetic tone. How prideful this bastard could be. With a smile I thought two could play this game, so I leaned back, putting my hands behind my head and my feet up the table. Yeah, have you seen my record? History would prove I'm right. How dare you disrespect the Sea Lord this way? The first sword of Bravus growled, clearly infuriated. What is a lord to a king? I chuckled playfully. As much as I like this nonsense, I came here to discuss the terms of your surrender, the Sea Lord said with a judgmental look on his face. Sure, I smiled, with a joyful expression forming up my face. The two of them seemed happy for a moment, and I knew it was my moment to strike. So, you will lay down your weapons, give me all your money, and kill yourself? Sounds fair. Both the first sword and the Sea Lord were astonished of my response. They surely didn't see that one coming. You are making a grave mistake, kid, the Sea Lord said with a hostile tone, trying to kill me with glares. No, I said with a dark tone, you are the one that made a mistake. When you let Ilrio buy 1 ton of wildfire, just to kill me, your greatest sin was making an enemy out of me. So do yourself a favor and kill yourself, because as long as your body is not underground rotting, I won't stop, I won't slow down. One way or another, you will die, and it will be because of me. How dare you? The first sword pulled his weapon him, which in turn made Grey Worm, who was one of my selected bodyguards, jump in front of me, spear ready to pierce any threats, followed by Ser Barristan Selmy. Allow me to kill this man, my king, Grey Worm requested, glaring at the first sword. You think Bravus will fall to you? The Sea Lord chuckled, but I could see his bitter tone miles away. No Bravasi would kneel to a slaver. Oh, wow, you need to upgrade your spy network, I chuckled. We are no slaves, we serve the Kull of the West, the breaker of chains, the father of dragons, the king of the known world because he is worthy of being followed. We are the ones that aren't worthy of his guidance, Grey Worm said, and I could feel he meant every single word. Insolent fool. The first sword growled, taking a step forward. Boy, I can cut you 20 times before you reach my king, so do your job and think wisely, or this might be the last decision you ever made, Ser Barristan said, sword ready to slice the first sword. You will die, and every Bravasi that dies will be because of you, I said, standing up. We are leaving, these two idiots are not worth my time. Grey Worm and Ser Barristan nodded, as they followed me out of that place, leaving behind the soon-to-be-dead idiots. I went back to my camp satisfied how the peace reunion had gone. Surrender? Ha. They should have thought of that when they paid for a nuke. You do not sponsor a nuclear deterrent and later say, we are doing it for peace. How do you want to proceed with this, my king? Ser Barristan inquired. Well, I have just the idea for this. I smiled as I started to explain my round table, consisting of Ser Barristan Selmy, my most trusted blood rider Angie, and Grey Worm, who I would rename Lancelot. Can't stand calling him Grey Worm, it feels like I'm insulting him. Oberyn Martell POV. I had finally arrived in Pentos, after a bit of delay with the storms and stuff. I was finally here, though the city wasn't like I remembered. The city had banners all over the place that seemed to be the mix of House Targaryen and House Mormont together, which means the young bear moves fast. And not only that, but I was immediately stooped by the Iron Navy, who then proceeded to interrogate me so much I was quite sure they knew me more than my beautiful Elaria now. Can I speak with the queen now? I inquired. Not that I don't like your company, I would love to take you out, but I have more pressing matters. You are as lively as rumors said, a commanding voice said behind me, which was more than easy to tell it was the queen, mostly because the men inside the room shut their mouths as soon as she entered. I am, thank you very much for noticing, I smiled. And I hope you have in your best interest to keep that. Daenerys smiled, and while subtle her threat was clear, take a wrong step and you won't be lively anymore or alive for the matter. It is, I like being alive, I nodded, with a smile. What is your purpose here? Daenerys inquired, taking a seat. To pledge myself to you and the king, Dorne is yours to command. I winked at her, if you let help us take our revenge on the Lannisters. The Lannisters are our enemies too, Daenerys nodded, then kneel, and pledge your blade to us. I did as I was told, as I smiled at her playfully, this is a sight I don't mind repeating. I will assume that was an ill-judged attempt of you trying to be funny. Daenerys narrowed her beautiful purple eyes at me. I'm your queen now, and I'm married, to your king. Oh dear, I would never sleep with the queen alone, but I wouldn't mind sleeping with both the queen and the king. I chuckled. You are going to have to forgive me, my queen. Dorne is the land of passion. We don't have boundaries. We fuck, we drink and we indulge ourselves in the carnal desires of the flesh, be it man or woman. So those rumors were true too, Daenerys said, bored. You are also a horny idiot. I must apologize, I smiled. It's the way I am. Next time you insinuate something like that I will have you join the Unsullied, Daenerys said with a cold tone. I must apologize in advance, it's just the way I am. Won't happen again, I nodded, quite surprised the little dragoness had such sharp claws and teeth under her pretty exterior. I better avoid the flirting if I want to keep my best friend attached to me. Chapter 78, Chapter 77. No wall surrounds my war camp, and yet, the Sea Lord was hesitant to attack me. He knew I was while young, dangerous, unpredictable. Or perhaps I was predictable. After all I do is win, but forgetting for a moment about feeding my own ego, I knew he didn't have the power to fight me up front, but that didn't mean he would resort to other methods. My king, Ser Barristan said, as he entered my room, his face letting me know he had something important to share. Yes, I inquired. There is a messenger from Bravos here, Ser Barristan answered, and this information confused me a bit. Didn't I told the Sea Lord a day ago I would kill him? Why in the seven hells would he send someone to talk to me? Taking a deep breath, I get off my tent, seeing a massive black horse rearing close to me, dust curling around its hooves. The horse was probably one of the most beautiful horses I've ever seen, and atop of that majestic horse, a piece of shit. A Bravosi messenger with a terribly scarred face and a pair of gold teeth. Of course, he didn't come alone, but considering that all he brought to a camp with 90,000 soldiers was nothing but 15 men, it was technically as if he came alone. Seriously, what can 15 men do with these numbers? The messenger took a step forwards, and I could already taste the smugness he emanated. I bring word from the great Sea Lord of Bravos. We can debate on the great part, I chuckled. If he was so great, why counsel he comprehend my clear hostility towards him? Many of my Dothraki approach the man with smirks on their faces. They touch the messenger hair and smell around him, and soon they all start to laugh. Michael, this man smells like a woman. I started to laugh with my men. Well, I suppose it was to be expected. A man that doesn't ride into battle is no man, my blood rider said with a smile. The messenger was by this point incredibly infuriated, hands griping his pants. Westerosi arrogance? It will be the death of you all. If it were not for the diplomacy of the great Sea Lord, I would rip the breath from your lungs, with my bare hands. I chuckled as I walked towards him, leaning close to him, handing him a knife. Oh my, threaten me with a good time. Go ahead, do it. None of my men will move, but be sure to kill on your first shot, because if you don't, you will regret it. My king. Ser Barristan protested but was silenced with a simple glare. You. The messenger froze with shock as stared at me with wide eyes, dropping the knife I gave him to the ground. So does anyone wants to try? I chuckled. You bastard. One of the Bravasi guards couldn't take it anymore and dashed with his blade towards me. I turned to him, a volunteer. With that I dashed forward, kicking him on the neck with enough strength to shattering his neck, killing him in one shot. I will fight you, another guard said. He was old but looked experienced. If I win, will your troops go back? They will. I smiled, eyeing the still fighting messenger who was just silent, like a mute. The man grabbed a big sword and started to swing at me, quite slow. It was as if dodging someone trying to punch me underwater. With me not being underwater, after a while, this sad attempt started to get boring. For God's sake, stop. This is stupid even by your Bravasi standards, and as we've seen this week, that threshold is vast. Is this just a game to you? The old soldier growled, angry, holding his massive sword tight. I smiled. A game? Hardly. If this were a game I would be having fun, or killing Joffrey. Now that sounds like a good time. The old soldier rushed at me, giving his last battle cry, that lasted for a few seconds before his decapitated head landed with a heavy thud on the floor. Now, that was depressing, I chuckled, eyeing the messenger. The messenger composed himself a bit, and said with the utmost confidence, if you value your lives over your complete annihilation, you must turn back now, while our great lord is forgiving. I sighed, wondering where did he get all that bravado. He just saw me effortlessly kill 2 of his guards, before continue to shit through your mouth. Bravasi, know that I am in a really bad mood today, so even a lord's messenger, you will be held accountable for the words coming out of your mouth. Is that clear? Leave, and submit to the Sea Lord, and all will be forgiven, the messenger said, ignoring my threat. Just how stupid can someone be? Submission, he wanted me to submit. How fucking dare he? If you don't submit, he will kill you and everyone you love. Weaponizing my family, I see, and who's going to swing the sword? I inquired angry. Your sea lord. That was laughable, you. Not in a million years. As I talk I continue to move towards the man, and his guards sword out. This. You can't kill the messenger. The messenger said, ordering his men to attack, but those were soon intercepted by my own guard, who were dealing with them quite easily. I told you, I whispered close to his ear, next time, learn to listen. With that I pushed my blade through his heart, as I stared deep into his eyes, seeing his life slowly drain out of him. Panic, fear, anger, were just a few of the emotions I was able to read on his face before the sweet release of death came for him. Kill everyone but one, I ordered my men. After all, I wanted someone to deliver the message that peace was never an option. They threw that to the trash when they helped my enemies. Oberyn Martell POV. The beautiful, but really scary queen, had ordered me and my army to go and help Ronard. Apparently, he is fighting with bravos. I didn't bring many men, but she said that I had to prove my loyalty by being there for my king, the things I do for revenge, the things I do for love. I finally had the chance to avenge Elia, my own sweet little son that was taken from us, by those wretched lions, and if the price to get the revenge Dorne has been waiting was to kneel for a new king, we would do it. I didn't care who sat on the throne, all I knew is that I didn't want it. Too much work, my only desire was to kill Tywin and his men. Let's go men, we are going dancing to bravos, I ordered, not really sure if any of my men understood my clever wordplay, about bravos water dancing. Dario Naharis POV. The young bear had changed his schedule completely, and here we were with a contract of defending a city he might not even attack anytime soon. But I suppose getting paid for doing nothing was also acceptable, but one thing was absolutely true, I still had no idea how we would win, when all we had was 500 soldiers. I'm not really sure what the masters of Yunkai expect. Because unless we each kill 200 of his army without dying, this was a suicide. Tywin Lannister POV. Dorne had pledged their loyalty to the young bear in Essos, that alongside the north gave the bear around 80,000 soldiers. That alone was very troubling, but to trust was just the beginning. The boy had also managed in Essos to acquire an army of 100,000 soldiers, which would bring his army to 180,000 soldiers. And while the young bear continued to grow and grow, our resources, our men, and everything we needed for this war was benign depleted. Slowly but surely, every day we were weaker, and because of that we would pay. If only we could get the Tyrells to join us, we would have a better chance at winning this. Renly needs to die. With Renly dead, we would be able to marry Margaery to Joffrey, and in the process we would even the numbers out, because so far, the boy was ahead of us. Then again he doesn't have to deal with the idiocy of my children, and the mad rat for a grandchild I had, Joffrey. Chapter 79, Chapter 78. Author note, this novel is around 70% done, so things will start to fall into place and stuff sooner than later. So if you want to read chapters ahead what I have done so far, be sure to check my Patreon. I have 14 chapters ahead. Also I'm starting a new novel on my Patreon first, but it will come way later on. I will post here once I have 20 chapters at least on Patreon. I don't know if some of you remember at the beginning of this novel that I said I had a Marvel Gamer idea. Well, I decided to flesh that out, with the first chapter already being on Patreon. For that novel the chapters are around 3,000,40,000 words per chapter. The first chapter is 3,400 words, so yeah big bois. Again my dear people, just letting you sexy readers know, but I will post here only after I have enough backup for a daily update. https://www.patreon.com/cornbringer. Join the Discord channel so we can chat and maybe exchange ideas for novels. https://discord.gg/8474223b. The time had come, the time for war. I would be leading the cavalry, with my entire Khalasar moving as one unit, while Lancelot aka Grey Worm attacked the gates of the city. Our forces were numerously superior to theirs, but they could still prove to be worthy opponents. Bravos had hired all the sellsword companies with the exception of two, the Golden Company and the Storm Crows. But even with those two out of the picture, they still had managed to amass 40,000 outside soldiers, which put them in a total of 60,000 soldiers on their side. But while their army could pose a problem, I knew I could handle things as they came. With my horses, ravens, snakes, bears and other animals my army was nearly unstoppable. But I wasn't going to let this thought of near invincibility cloud my judgment. Only fools think of victory before it. I will lead the first attack with my Khalasar, I informed my war council. And we will lead the navy attack, right? My Ironborn inquired, looking at the map. Yes, I nodded, turning to the Unsullied. The Unsullied alongside Ser Barristan will push the main gate, while I keep their undivided attention on me. It shall be done, Lancelot nodded. I will do my best, Ser Barristan bowed. That was just part A of my plan. With the help of my ravens I would bomb the city with medieval Molotovs, setting bravos and unfortunately its people on fire. What I wanted to accomplish with this was to diverse their attention with chaos outside and within the city. This would break whatever strategy they had, or at the very least weaken them. But that just the beginning of my Air Force attack, because Rhoda would be leading the air assault forces B, where 500 ravens would be dropping poison bombs within the enemy ranks, disrupting their formations and killing some of their ranks. At first I was reluctant to send my ravens with poison to attack, history has proved they tend to kill themselves with that, but Rhoda showed me they had evolved to the point where they didn't, so I approved of his idea. With this my victory was partly assured, now it was time to execute my plan. To war! I shouted, rallying my men. To war! At the battle began, with my ravens being the first ones to attack, my loyal birds fly really high, far from the reach from the enemy's arrow range and begin releasing small metal objects that release a poisonous mist. The Bravasi soldiers soon begin to choke and gag, and not having the antidote I had their throat began to swell and one by one they fell into the ground with heavy thuds. Wait for it, I had my troops on standby, waiting for my ravens to complete their part. Soon after the next airstrike followed, with the other squad of ravens dropping molotovs, that in total equal barrels of flammable liquid bravus setting the city in flames from the air. I let this continue for a few minutes, seeing how my feathery friends destroyed their ranks one by one, but them alone would not win this, it was time. I gallop with my horse with thousands of Dothraki soldiers following me as I yell charge. My troops rush forward with me with loud war cries. I'm in front of the charge, like a cul should be, and soon enough, my army crashes into the enemy. I start hacking at the Bravasi soldiers, killing 8 with my first swing without getting off my horse. I swing again, slashing another throat leaving a trail of death behind me as I move forward. Jumping off my horse, mostly because fighting in one is uncomfortable, I rolled in the ground grabbing a warhammer, deciding to try dual wielding this weapon with my sword. I swung the warhammer, shattering someone's skull with ease. As I continued with my assault, I duck under a spear that was going for my head in an attempt to kill. With a smile I dropped the warhammer for a second as I grabbed the spear from the still alive enemy, disarming him with a swift kick and then jabbed his own weapon through his neck. Noticing I was about to be surrounded, I smiled as I swung my blade, killing 5 guys with a single sweep. Taking a deep breath, I keep on dancing through the battlefield, turning and tearing through the Bravasi ranks. Seeing that around 20 more soldiers were coming my way, I leaped into the air as one spearman tried to stab me. In the air I grabbed the soldier's neck and with a strong twist broke his neck, doing a 180-degree turn. Wow, I will call that move the Hooternider, because hoot damn, I laughed. With a dark smile I kept on fighting, slaughtering like the pigs they were while laughing and roaring as blood splattered my armor with each swing. At one point I was head to toe covered in their blood. And after a few hours of them seeing me slaughter them like pigs with no success in harming me, the Bravasi soldiers started to flee in sheer terror from me and my soldiers, but mostly me. My Dothraki warriors of course wouldn't let this happen, so they chased them down, wiping everyone that tries to escape my herd. To the city, I shouted, mounting my horse, and immediately galloping to Bravus. Farrago and Tarayan POV. The city was burning, our army was being slaughtered. If this continued we would lose by the end of the day. I was so sure we could hold him down, for years if necessary, but how was I supposed to know he had trained his ravens to drop poison and fire? The only option I had was to challenge him to a duel, his champion against mine, the winner takes all. Send a raven to the young bear, this was my last bet, and the last path to victory we still had. My first sword was sure to win for me this war, for there wasn't any better swordsman than him. Ronard Mormont POV. A few hours after the slaughter outside the city walls, a raven arrived from the Sea Lord. He wanted to avoid any further Bravasi blood to be spilled and requested we solve this with a duel, his champion against mine. The duel had but one rule, I couldn't fight. This was a high-risk, high-reward situation. If I won, Bravus would be mine faster, and I would lose less, but if my champion lost, I would have to stop invading them. Allow me to fight for you, Ser Baristan said kneeling. I have fought more duels than any man alive, and I'm still here. Let me win this battle for you. The old knight was right in one thing, he was my best option. My Dothraki weren't good at fighting armored knights, and I wasn't sure Lancelot could win against the first sword. Bring me honor and glory, I nodded, and I could see as if I had given the man the crown or something. His spirit was fueled with a strong drive to win now. I will, my king, Ser Baristan said, with his tone sounding as if he was stating a fact, the fact that his victory was assured. Brienne of the Kingsguard POV. I was finally serving the man I loved. I knew I would never be his queen, but this was more than enough. To be his blade was more than enough. Today we were preparing for battle, to battle with Stannis's forces the next dawn, and I was guarding him, but a cold and chilling air invaded my very core, fear turning me blind for a second. Immediately I turned around to see a shadow approaching Renly. No, I shouted, rushing to save my king, but it was too late. For all I managed to accomplish was seeing my king being slain by the animated shadow, that looked like Stannis. I had failed to protect the man I loved, I failed my duty, but I would avenge him. Chapter 80, Chapter 79. As I had agreed on paper, I had chosen a champion, and with the champion I met in the arena with the Sea Lord of Bravus, ensuring it was both a neutral ground for me and for him. My champion was Ser Baristan, who was more than ready to duel the first sword of Bravus, master of the infamous water dancing sword style. The crowds in the arena were roaring in anticipation, wanting for the duel to start, and as for me, I was anxious, wondering why the hell I accepted this in the first place. I had already won partially, but it was too late now, so I decided to trust the old knight. And besides, it has been ages since I have seen a proper sword fight, where I'm not involved. Taking a deep breath, I stand up and shouted, start. seconds after the two blades clashed, and it was like a lightning storm coming together in one place, quite impressive being on the other end, seeing a battle unfold with some good wine and food. While many are blinded and deafened by the clashing of metal on metal, I find myself enjoying the thrill of this show, which made me worry a bit. Did I enjoy the possibility of losing, or that someone else was fighting for me? Or perhaps I just liked the fight with no secret motive. The crowd was apparently like me, enjoying the show because they were going wild, some cheering for Baristan and some for the first sword of Bravus. I looked over at the first sword and saw him struggling but standing his ground against the seasoned knight. In a brief moment he noticed I was looking and smiled at me with a toothy smile. The fuck? I muttered, looking over Baristan. Kill him now. I had a feeling they were planning something, but what? At my command, Baristan charged at the first sword of Bravus, with blinding speed, and while he wasn't nearly as fast as me, it surprised me time. With a singular move his blade flashes in the shock. The first sword of Bravus barely moves out of the way, avoiding lethal damage, but not crippling damage. I knew because of how long the Bravasi took to reach that Baristan was going to be faster, too fast for him to avoid completely. Which is why the first sword of Bravus ended up with Baristan's blade buried on his right shoulder, which made him drop his own sword. Pain and shock froze him for a brief second, and that brief second was all the knight needed to win. In a swift motion he took his blood-covered blade out of the Bravasi's shoulder, proceeding to sever his head immediately after. The duel was complete. I had won. Baristan turned around and kneeled as he said, "This victory is in honor of my king. Long shall he reign." I won. I turned with a huge smirk on my face to see the Sea Lord of Bravus smiling. For now, the Sea Lord cackled. "Okay, please enlighten me." I sighed, wondering what they did to think they still had a chance. "Any moment now the poison in your wine will take effect." The Sea Lord smiled, looking at my wine. "You won the battle, not the war, young bear." "And my men?" I inquired. I had brought 100 guards with me, keeping my army outside, and while I doubted he managed to poison them, I had to ask. People tend to spill everything when sure of their victory, though I wonder how he will react when he finds out I'm immune to poisoning. "Just you," the Sea Lord smiled. "I said I wanted to end this bloodshed, and for that to happen only you have to die. Ha ha ha. God fucking damn it," I sighed. "And in your plan, how did you plan to stop me if I decided to kill you before the poison started to work?" The Sea Lord looked at me, and after a second of nothing, probably realizing he didn't plan that far ahead, he unsheathed his blade. "I'm more than enough to kill you." Ha 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 ha. I laughed, which apparently made the Sea Lord really angry. "Oh dear, you were serious? Then please, allow me to laugh even harder." Ha 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 ha. How dare the Sea Lord was about to probably say something along the lines of, "I am the best blah blah," but I had enough shit for one day, so I shut him up by putting my hand on his mouth. "And, I am done, Sea Lord. While there's absolutely nothing I'd rather do than stand here and listen to you bluster at me until the heat death of the universe, I literally have a million better things to do, like killing Joffrey." Suwa with a huge smile, I threw him like a bag of trash into the arena. Loud gasps of shock could be heard around, as I landed beside him. "How dare you?" the Sea Lord cried out in pain. The following act contains violence, coarse language, and adult situations not suitable for minors. Viewer discretion is advised. I chuckled as I grabbed the crying Sea Lord by his shirt, snapping his neck like a stick before he could even process what was about to happen. Time to rip off Perfect Cell even more. Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, and those idiots that still think you can best me, I am Ronard. And you may recognize me as the young bear, or as the Cull of the West, or perhaps as the mighty conqueror. But that's not what I'm here to talk to about today. Today, I'm making an announcement. At this point I had everyone's attention in the arena, all the nobles of Bravus staring at me. "I will take this city, that much is a fact. It can be by blood or not. I'll let the people of Bravus decide. I'm not that bad, but you will only have till tomorrow at noon to decide." Murmurs could be heard among the crowd, fear spreading among them like a pandemic. Just what I was looking for. Fear breeds submission. That should give everyone plenty of time to prepare and get ready to fight me. Or for those that know that it is impossible to beat me but are too stubborn to surrender, time to connect with loved ones, get your affairs in order, or maybe just kill someone? Get a purge going? Live a little? Because in 18 hours, I chuckled as I pointed to the dead Sea Lord. So, keep that in mind and the shit in your parts, and I'll see you all tomorrow at noon. Also, feel free to pray to your god. But spoilers. I won't be listening. With that I walked out of the arena with my men following me close behind, leaving a mute audience of nobles that were so shocked by my display they couldn't even muster words. That speech was certainly terrifying, Ser Baristan said. "I learned that from a friend, his name is Sal." I chuckled. "Well, he is really good at making things both oddly appealing to the audience and terrifying," Ser Baristan said. "War sometimes is more about the mind games than the soldiers." I chuckled. "That is a wise statement, my king," Ser Baristan nodded. Gordon Ramsay Ravnicu's POV. "I was the royal chef for the dragon siblings, and all I did was fucking tasty. Corntastic. I was the proud owner of 3 Cornchillin stars. Can I eat it now?" Neltharion said, trying to take a bit out of the pig I was roasting. *Caw. Can't you see is raw, you stupid baboon?" I shouted angrily, slapping the young dragon prince away. "I will let you know when it's ready to go." "Ha ha ha," Regal laughed. "Serves you right, moron," Crow chuckled. "The fuck you called moron?" Neltharion growled, smoke coming out of his mouth. "I can add dragons to the menu?" So stop your idiotic activities in my kitchen, *, I caught at them. Sorry, the 3 young dragons said in one voice.